Call the meeting to order.
Go right
I don't
ahead.
think we're expecting anybody else.
Nope.
So, I call the meeting to order. Do the Pledge of Allegiance. I need to start that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Vice Chair Chapin?
Here.
Commissioner Path? Here. Commissioner Nelson? Here. Commissioner Pearson?
Here.
And the Saxinas are out on college tours today, so they will be missing this meeting, but should be here for our April meeting.
Oops, I'm looking at last week's, not this agenda. Thank you. So next, orders of the day, which is the order that things are going to be in. Do we change that now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to suggest we have Bruce Avenue discussed as early in the meeting as practical, so that the people that are here to talk about it won't have to stay all night.
We can move that up in front of the pavement management program right after the acceptance of the minutes,
Okay.
if that works for the commission. Perfect.
Anything else that we should address?
Nope, just have to vote on that. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And then you want to call for a vote?
Ayes?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so next we're going to hear from, is there any written communication?
There are not, but we want to call for oral communications.
Does anybody want to speak generally, not specifically with respect to Bruce Avenue, for example? We don't have any? So next is a presentation from Yang.
Pull up her presentation quickly.
I've had a lot of experience with Yang. She's led a couple bike rides around Los Gatos showing all the improvements that they've done and planned, and she's doing a lot of good things for Los Gatos.
Okay.
So thank you for your time.
Thank you for inviting me, allowing me to be here. And my name is Ying Smith. I work for the town of Los Gatos, right next door. I'm the transportation and mobility manager. So we're doing a lot of work to improve a lot of bicycle and pedestrian improvements. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share our projects with you. Some of them are right at the border. Some of them are going to be joint projects between the town and the city. So that's why I'm here. So I have some flyers so you can get our website information. So first, we want to just spend a couple minutes to talk about our new program, our current program. So back in 2017, like one step back, actually Los Gatos and Monte Sereno worked together to adopt the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. And since then, I think we're all working together to really build those projects. So we have a group of projects now. Our initiative is to look at not only the individual projects, but a program of projects. And we will brand those projects, this effort, to call Connect Los Gatos. So the idea is to really look at not just individual improvements, but how we can build a bigger network to really make biking and walking easier for people and safer. So currently we have 6 projects on what we're working on, and some of them do affect you. And tonight I want to talk about 3 projects that affect you, and just more like introduction, very brief introduction to generate the interest and share with you the ways you can provide input either to city staff or to us directly. So there's bicycle and pedestrian overcrossing over 17, and then the second one is the Winchester Boulevard Complete Streets, and the third project is Highway 9 Moselle intersection. There's some pedestrian improvements. So I'm going to just provide intro to all of them. The first one is the Highway 17 biped overcrossing, we call BPOC. And why it's important for Monte Sereno, even though it is going to be entirely within the town of Los Gatos, why it's important is all the students, the enrollment, all the middle school students will go to Fisher Middle School. I mean, if you go to public school. And then Blossom Hill is really the logical path to get there. Many of you know that Blossom Hill is very congested during the morning, special morning, afternoon peak hours. We do have some students are really good. They bike or walk to school. But the current bridge is very narrow, even though the town makes some improvements on Blossom Hill, put in the bike lane, a much wider, we call it the multi-use path on the sidewalk side to allow both cyclists and pedestrians to walk on. Is still, the bridge is really the bottleneck, and it's a very unsafe conditions because the sidewalk is very narrow, the bike lane is very narrow. I'm a somewhat experienced bike rider, but I don't bike on that bridge. I get scared myself. So I'm taking this project a little bit personally, but really that when you look at the number of people biking, both the students as well as the adults, for all times of the day, or like during the day hours and any day of the week, you see a lot of people. So we really want to find a way to build a better crossing. So we start out by looking at 3 alternatives. That's all documented in Los Gatos' different documents. One is a connection to Nino Avenue that will bring you to the backside of Fisher Middle School. And the second alternative is to build a bridge closer to Blossom Hill, the Blossom Hill Bridge. And the third alternative is to widen the existing Blossom Hill Road overcrossing, the current bridge. We have a design team, a consultant working for us. And we, based on what we have studied so far, we decided alternative 3 will give us a lot of challenges, mostly because this is bridge over Highway 17, and the current clearance is below Caltrans standard. In order to touch the bridge, we either have to rebuild a new bridge, or we will have to ask Caltrans for so-called design exception, which is very difficult to get. So we, in a way, at the beginning of the process, we want to actually narrow down to the options that are more feasible, and we found that number 3, widening the existing bridge, is not going to be part of this project. So we are doing our own outreach, and we're actually going to have a community meeting on Tuesday the 25th in the evening. And we want to get the input. We already get our own complete streets and transportation commission's input, and then we'll go to our council to ask the council to authorize us to focus on 1 and 2. And there may be some variations how we design it, but we want to focus on the ones that are more viable rather than spending the time and money on the one that is very, very challenging. So that's where we are. We at this process, we're still early. We only have funding for the very, very initial phase. We still have to go to final design and then construction. It is going to be a long-term project, and we want to get support from the Baker community because it's a highway crossing kind of structure, and we also want to get your input in the process. So that's the introduction of this biped overcrossing. And the next project is actually right at the border between Los Gatos and Monte Sereno. This is the Highway 9 Massaul intersection. And many of you probably remember the fatality happened a few years ago. And even before that, we heard a lot of complaints about this intersection being difficult to cross. Many residents here walk to Los Gatos downtown for. Actually, Bruce, I saw you walking one time with crossing the street, and a lot of Los Gatos kids, they will have to walk across to go to Dave's Avenue because that's their elementary school. And of course, a lot of people just walking to the business and all that. So the town, right after the fatality, did a study to look at different options, how we can make this intersection crossing safer for pedestrians. In this case, our focus is pedestrian safety. And our town council, the decisions to build a RRFB, rectangular rapidly flashing beacon. You actually have several of them right here on Highway 9. So they are very, very new, right? They just installed not long ago. So it's that technology. It's more visible than what we have now. In addition to that, we also have some marking for the cars. It really is want the cars to slow down, want the cars to pay attention to pedestrians. That's really important. So that's one group of improvements. It's one big project, but there's some treatments to really help to make this intersection safer. The second part is landscape median. So that is a way to use design to slow down the cars. We cannot change the speed limit because there are many considerations that the law doesn't allow us to just lower the speed limit. But speed is a problem for pedestrians, car speeds. So we want to build a landscape median to use this design element to help the cars, encourage them to slow down. And another part is to install green bike lanes, and then we also want to improve the lighting. Lighting is a very important element, especially during certain times of the day.
Ying, and I don't know, I have some comments on this and some input just because I walk that all the time and I've studied it for 25 years. Is it appropriate that we do it now, or do we do that offline, or how does that happen?
I mean, you're welcome to give her any comments now and offline if you want to be more detailed.
Is it helpful?
Yeah, it's totally up to.
I'd like to hear myself what you have to say.
Okay. So if you're coming down Montgomery, which is that street just past the dry cleaners, you can cross left. So if you're a car, you can turn left, and there's kind of a semi area that's going to be probably right where that landscape median is. But if you do that in traffic, it's a mess. So one suggestion might be to make that right turn only there, no left turn. I don't know if you can do that. The other thing is if you're coming down Masal and you're going to turn left towards Saratoga, if you're in a small car, and I have a small car and I have a tall car, if you're in a tall car, you can see over the business sign that's there. If you're in a small car, you have to go past your new crosswalk to even have a sight line to see the cars coming. So that sign is a problem. And the other thing people do when they're coming down Masal, and you probably have heard this from the business, but it creates a whole other problem, is people cut through right where you see those white building, the roofs. They go in that parking lot, and then they come out onto Highway 9, so they avoid that corner completely. And they do that in the morning if you're out there. It's crazy. But the problem that is then you have people coming from Masal, you have people trying to merge in through that parking lot, and then there actually is another driveway. So you have 3 different people trying to merge in across traffic coming towards Los Gatos. And so it's all going in there trying to get, and then you have somebody on Montgomery trying to make a left turn across it, and they're all meeting in the middle where, right past where your pedestrian refuge is going to be. So there's a lot going on. And then you have dry cleaner traffic, which is pulled through. And you have that, on that same side, you have the car place, which is really busy in the morning, the car repair place, and you have people coming in and out of that. And the other thing I see quite often still is you still have people, you've made it better, but people coming from Los Gatos going towards Saratoga, they're still making a U-turn there. And they have to do like a 3-point or a 5-point turn to get around there. But I know you're going to have, constructions going on now on the corner there where the liquor store was and all that that's being redone. But you're going to have a lot more people that are going to want to make U-turns there. And they just do it. Even though it says no U-turn, even if it's not possible. And unfortunately, then it backs up traffic a lot because you can't make a U-turn without doing a 3 or 5-point turn.
Yeah, those are all very, very good points. And some of the things, when we look at this, when we did the study this back in, I believe, 2018, we realized there are many issues with this location. Some of the things, for example, the sign, it probably shouldn't have been there, but it's there already. So the town just, like, our hands are tied. So I would say the solutions we're proposing here is not going to solve all the problems, unfortunately. Our consultant actually suggests 3 different alternatives, but there are always pluses and minuses in each one. So there was not like a one that is, it take care of all those issues. unfortunately, we don't have a solution that's like a winner of all. This is the solution that address some of the problems within the time frame and the budget we have. So yes, we still have several remaining problems. I'm not saying the other two. The other two suggestions are a hawk, which is a signal, but is a little bit different from a full signal. The other suggestion is a full signal. So when you look at all three, they do have pluses and minuses in each one. For example, but in any case, we cannot address this driveway. Well, actually, this happens to be my commute route. I bike to work from Saratoga to here, and I'm scared of those driveways because there's if a few cars wanting to make a left turn as a cyclist, I don't think they can see me. I don't think they care to see me. But in all three solutions, our consultant suggested none of them will fix the driveways.
And have you talked to the property owner there? And because I can't imagine they're thrilled with that. I've seen them come to work, and there's people, just cutting through their.
Oh, cutting through their parking lot? I don't think they're happy about that either.
Yeah, no, so they might be willing to work with you on a solution.
Okay.
Because I don't
That
think
is a
they're
really
happy
good
with
point.
it either.
Okay, that's a good point.
Signage, they may be happy with, if the town kicked in some money to revamp the sign and elevate it, or, go against code and put it somehow, but so it would make it safer.
Yeah, I would say I don't know if we have talked to the property owner. I definitely will follow up with our project manager, our engineer on this one, because I'm not the one who designed it. So they might have. So let me just keep it that way. But I definitely can follow up with them to see if there are other opportunities before we wrap up the design. So I appreciate your input.
Really feel that left turn that you're describing through the private property makes it less safe? Because, I feel more, I cheat and use that myself, and I feel more safe doing it that way.
As a driver, you do?
As a driver.
Yeah, but I think the problem is if you're a bicyclist, you're a pedestrian, your car coming from Saratoga, now not only do you have to worry about Massaul coming and people coming from Montgomery and sitting in the middle, but you've got these other driveways, people coming at you. There's too much going on there, in my opinion, already.
That's true.
To add 2 more lanes coming in at random, people that are really in a hurry trying to get to work. But I understand why people do it, because when you get up to Massaul, either there's a line or you can't see.
And you only have to go 1 lane at a time. And that's why I like it. You go to the middle lane.
You can go to the middle, but you have a dedicated, the suicide lane, which we've had people killed. We had a guy decapitated in that lane, so just to let you know, it's not always safe.
We'll look at
No perfect solution yet. There's a lot going on.
Are the first thing, the shark teeth, is that what you have in near Saratoga Village? Is that what you're describing? I'm not. You said it's elsewhere on Highway 9, and I'm not.
The RFB itself. Let me go to this one. This is what it looked like, and on the picture on the left side is our existing picture. The picture on the right side is the RFB we're going to install.
Shark teeth are the painted, where they're
exactly.
painted like
Okay.
giant shark teeth, so they're more visible.
So the difference is this is the flashes one. Was kind of at the last minute I couldn't find a picture that shows the entire rectangle is flashing. So that's the difference. The shark teeth is actually a very inexpensive solution. It does draw more attention, like make the drivers pay more attention. Helps pedestrians, so they pay more attention to the crosswalk.
What about putting the flags there just as a temporary kind of thing? Is there any thought of that?
It hasn't. At least we're not doing in Los Gatos. We try in our downtown on Santa Cruz. They got stolen, and people don't put them back, and it's really for the users to decide, and we don't find that to be too effective, and we're not trying to do it at this location.
As you walk out there, because I do walk out there every week, sometimes you're having to wave and you've got the light and the button on, and people they're not prepared for pedestrians.
It is. I bike and I drive every day, and this is my commute route. It's hard to somehow the change, right? You change from Highway 9, it's very sudden, and then you're on a downgrade, right? So the cars and bikes have speed, and even as a cyclist, when the light flashes, I try to look for pedestrians. Sometimes actually I can't see them until they step into the crosswalk. But light at least helps you are looking for someone, be prepared. So it's not a very good situation. So part of our council's motivation is do something quick rather than wait for 10 years so to build a signal, like even if that's the ultimate solution, right? So that's their motivation. Use money we have in the budget rather than a few $1 million that we don't have to make the improvements. So the project itself is fully funded. We are going out for bid soon and hope to do construction in the summer. So we still have some, still waiting for Caltrans approval because Highway 9 is Caltrans, and we still have some opportunity to make the final, like some minor changes to make it better.
I was involved in 2014, so BFK Engineering worked on this and did a lot of study for that. And the solutions that we have now were an improvement. So I hate to see another interim solution because we have money and we throw it up, but we can't do it really, really well. I almost think it needs to be done really well just because it's safe routes to school. There's so many people crossing them. There's so much going on. Now you've got more construction and more businesses going to be there. I would like to see it done as best it could be done. Yeah, and address some of these other issues that are around it. Yeah. Otherwise, we're just kind of piecemealing this, and we're getting a step safer, but we're not doing that.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So if we no more questions, we're going to move on to the next project, the third one. But really appreciate your input. So the next one is we call Winchester Boulevard Complete Street. So well, I guess I don't have to explain because it's like better streets here. So it is looking at different modes. So this is the corridor actually borders our two, the city and the town. And many of you are familiar with it. It's very wide. At the moment, it's very wide, and the speed limit is 35 miles per hour, but the actual speed on average is probably higher than that. We do have a class 2 bike lane, the regular bike lane. There's sidewalk for the most part, but there's some gaps. We in the town, we see this is like a blank white canvas. We can paint. We can do a lot of things, a lot of opportunities with so much right away we have. So we are very motivated to do something to improve, not for the cars, but actually for everyone. It is for the cyclists, for pedestrians, and people crossing the street, and students going to school. And also is visually, we want to make it look pretty. It's a lot of concrete now. We think there's some opportunities to make it look prettier, and also some challenges for us to encourage the cars to slow down, because we found that for people walking and biking, the number one complaint is too many cars, and the cars too fast, and make them feel very unsafe. So this our consultant helped us look at. You probably can read all the information. We're really early in this project, but some challenges in this corridor. And we actually, when you look at it carefully, the study limit is from Blossom Hill all the way to town limits with Campbell. There's nose, so all the way crossing 85. It's a pretty long corridor. It's pretty. There's some special issues on the northern end once you pass Albright, and we want to first zoom into this. I call it the southern 2/3, or the southern segment is from Blossom Hill to Albright. That's our first focus, because here you're not crossing the freeway, and makes things relatively like less complicated. I mean, I can be wrong, but usually when you're just dealing with local streets. So for that first southern segment, we know we definitely want to improve a lot of things and maybe reallocate the lane space. But we one thing we know pretty sure is to build a class 4 bike lane, which is a protected bike lane, similar to what we did on Blossom Hill between Los Gatos Boulevard and Roberts. So we think there's space there. We have looked at the cross-section, and that is the first thing we build. So we kind of have two things going on along this corridor. The complete street study, conceptual engineering, kind of looking at the longer-term picture, and then the class 4 bike lanes are for a shorter turn, something we can build next year. And with our very capable consultant and town and city staff, I think we can make these two pieces sync. So we're doing two together, but I think at the end they will all work out. I'm not going to go into details. So there, like for example, we'll have some ideas. Our consultant and town staff figure out some of the ideas. Like in this segment between Lark and Shelburne, we think there is some to allocate the class 4 protected bike lanes, and then also look at how we accommodate pedestrians. Sidewalk, some places are missing. And also another challenge is to cross Winchester itself. It's not very safe, and we want to look at some key locations we can provide a much better crossing. So this one we are really just kicked off this year, and this is our schedule. And we see doing outreach once we have the draft, the initial design. Want to do more intensive outreach to ask people what they think about the different designs. So the March timeframe put us in the round 1 of outreach. Then we keep working through it. We do have a point that we need to finish the design on the class 4 bike lane by the end of the year in the fall timeframe, and to meet, we've got some grant funding to build the bike lane itself. So that we'll have to wrap up the construction contract by the end of the year, this year, and then go into construction next year in the summer. So, and in terms of longer term, some of the bigger ticket items that we have to come back and figure out how we're going to get those things built. And we hope we really look forward to working with the city on this project, on both the bike lane as well as the longer term complete streets picture. I think that's about it for the Blossom Hill, Winchester, yes.
Quick question. When you say outreach round 1, do you plan to reach out to residents? Is that what you?
Yeah, like general public. So one thing I definitely want to, actually it's a good segue. So we have, we call public engagement Connect Los Gatos is really the way we connect with people. We have a website, encourage you to take a flyer. We have this, our intern there, young people, they're so good with all the technology stuff, right? So we have a QR code, go to our website. We have a notify me so you can get project updates. Once we have any update, you can get it. So we, similar to what we're doing tonight, we send out notice, we put it on Nextdoor, we put it on the town's website to ask people, invite them to participate at meetings.
Are you doing that for Monte Sereno residents as well? Because there's, some of those, like if you live off Eaton or you live off Grosvenor, that's the only way out of your neighborhood is to get to Winchester. And I know that because I live in there, and I've seen cars use the bike lane as another car lane because it's so wide. Mm-hmm. So there's probably some pockets of Monte Sereno residents that use that every day, multiple times a day, who it would be nice to contact the people who live or reside on those streets that, connect right to Winchester.
Okay, definitely work with Jessica on that. And yeah, this is actually a pretty long corridor. And we are, for example, what we have been doing is reach out to the residents. We do the mailing, kind of old school, the snail mail. We really rely on our website too, because and then we want to do some interactive tools to, like at this stage, ask them to express what they think the deficiencies are, the problems are. Actually, at one of the safe routes to school meeting, I had a comment from a Monte Sereno resident. She's active in safe route to school. She mentioned some of the lack of sidewalk at the bus stop on La Recoleta that area, so we don't have sidewalk and people wait at the bus stop at kind of mud,
In the dirt,
Yeah. And then how do they walk home if they have to walk a block or something? So we actually want to, the old school like meeting face-to-face meetings are great, but we also want to use technology because some people they're too busy,
Right.
and we want to have some interactive activities so people can just say, oh, no crossing, unsafe crossing, like something so simple, right? They can just drop a pin at the location, so we get really good input. Definitely, when we have something tangible for people to review and respond to, we definitely want to have some more intense.
That would be great if you could loop in the Monte Sereno residents who are, right there.
And then I'm happy to come back right here too if you have room for me. So
Awesome.
On your agenda.
Question, Ying, the bike lane along Blossom Hill is very practical, but not very visually appealing. Do you think there'll be opportunity with all the room to make something more visually appealing than that one?
Yeah, we definitely once we get to that. For us, the Blossom Hill one is pretty. Is our first one, and then definitely there's some options for us to separate the bike lane. I see that in Cupertino they have a more hard concrete separation. Visually, it may not be necessarily prettier, but I think they have other considerations because they're mostly it's a safe route to school project. And I think we have a few options to choose from once we get to that. Cost is also a consideration, so just like a balance of cost versus the look and function too. Yeah. Thanks.
Does Los Gatos ever think about using some cities? There's a lot of roundabouts being used now, but sometimes I've seen them on big straightaways. They put a roundabout just to slow traffic. There is not necessarily an intersection, but this is a traffic calming or slowing measure.
Oh, okay.
ones that
Yeah,
you can't
I
drive
mentioned.
over.
I actually saw one in San Diego. That's exactly kind of make the street not as straight. I know San Jose is going to do one on Story Keys. I don't like the price tag, so let me put it that way. So roundabout tend to be very expensive, but definitely they are very functional in certain way. And the one in San Diego I saw is very actually make the street look very, very nice. So yeah,
And
that's a very
Eden
creative
Avenue in
idea.
San Jose, I think they did too many, but they did roundabouts and then they did bulbouts from, in front of every so often that kind of narrows the traffic lane too.
Even Foothill Expressway close to Palo Alto and Stanford, they did that a few years ago. They kind of narrowed the lanes, and instead of just going straight, now you kind of have to segue. You have to weave a little bit, so you can't drag race down there anymore.
Okay.
And I can't, a roundabout like that, the kind of cool thing is almost like your downtown, they were called, but where they put out the restaurants and they put the chairs and stuff. You can do a roundabout on a temporary basis. I mean, I don't know with, legal things around it, but you can try it. You can do it in a very cost-effective way and try it and see if it, what the impact is before you actually, while you're looking for funding to build a roundabout.
Right. Just like how we did the one-way street kind of
Right.
a temporary project to. Yeah. Okay. Wow. I'm getting a lot of great ideas from you, and I think definitely reach out to us on the website. I mean, there are contact information for each project. We're still just building the website yet, so it's not we haven't had anything for Winchester yet. But Jessica is also we've been talking about those projects. So definitely through your staff. And we can work on this project together. It's a very exciting one for us because it's just so many opportunities.
And you've got some funding that's an aggressive timeline. So
Yes, and on the note, we have a little bit of money to build a class for all 3 projects here we mentioned. We are going after the Measure B funding that is at VTA. It's a very, very competitive cycle, but we figure we'll give it a try. And with the Winchester, we hope to go in as a joint project that hopefully help us score a bit more points. and it's, hey, we'll definitely give it a try. We don't know the chance, and no one knows because it's the first time.
I would use the fire department too. They're down there in South End. Having them on your side for this too might
Good.
help you politically.
Right. So yes, we will see, and if we are successful in at least some of them, that will really help the funding picture. So one step at a time. Yes, if there's no, see if another questions, and we can wrap up this one.
Thank you for your
very
time.
much. Thank you.
Thank you for
Very
your
important. Thank you.
Jessica.
No problem.
This group.
A lot of very exciting things going down in Los
Yeah,
Gatos.
please take a flyer so you can get to our website.
I did notice that we skipped over the election of chair and vice chair.
Oh.
We can do that tonight. We can also wait until we have our entire commission here at our next meeting, whatever you all would prefer.
Preference would be to go ahead.
Sure, let's go ahead and,
You just need to oh, go ahead.
Can I make a motion?
Oh, yeah,
that-
go, you know
that,
what, let's jump to it.
I make a motion that Commissioner Chaffin take the chair
Chairmanship?
position.
you probably, does she need to nominate me?
Do I need to nominate? Oh, can I nominate?
Yes.
Okay.
And then he
Then
accepts the nomination, and then you can put up your motion.
Okay, then I will nominate Commissioner Chaffin to be the new chair.
I will accept her nomination.
And now I will make a motion. Do I need to make a motion?
Mm-hmm.
Make a motion that we approve or
Appoint.
appoint
Yeah.
Commissioner Chaffin as the new chair.
Then you would call the vote.
Ayes?
Aye.
All right. Any nominations for vice chair?
Doreen?
I will accept.
Have to say the official language.
All those in favor?
Yeah, that's good enough. All right, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Right. So one more item prior to the Bruce Avenue item is approval of the minutes from our December meeting. If someone would like to make a motion.
Anybody see anything that needs to be changed?
You know, the only thing I saw was just clarification. Just, it says that we had asked for staff to investigate traffic calming measure on Vineland. So, sorry, that's down under number 3
Yes.
unfinished. So we recommended that all-way stop control on Vineland Avenue and Vineland Court be retained, and that staff investigate traffic calming measure on Vineland. So I think it was measures,
Yes.
right? And was there any more direction, or that's where we were talking about maybe signage coming down, that there was cross traffic?
Oh,
I just
is it
wasn't
different?
clear what.
Oh,
And I don't know if we were specific enough in that. I just don't want to go, like, open a whole can of worm of traffic calming things, or?
Yeah, I don't recall being specific.
no, I think we were just talking in general. I
There
don't
might
think,
be other things.
yeah.
But did we want them investigated?
Are we talking about Vineland and
And side street that comes.
Blanchard? Is that the one?
Yeah, Vineland and Blanchard stop sign.
Thought we had,
Well,
Yeah, I
my
thought we were
my
keeping it-
recollection is the residents were unhappy with the speed of cars and,
that we were going to look into traffic calming
Calming
measures,
measures.
and I don't know that we had, that's kind of where we left it. So, I think that,
So it's okay.
I think it's okay,
Okay,
because the recommendation, the part that is in bold, the always stop, be retained, and that we investigate, or that staff investigates alternative traffic calming.
And if you, once that's done, then it'll come back to us. for
Yes.
final review.
Yeah. I think we're good.
did that require an amendment or?
No, because I think that's the way it's stated right there. Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good. I just wasn't clear on what that was.
Yeah, no problem.
Make a motion, we approve the,
Motion to approve the December 12th meeting minutes.
I will second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So then item 1, which was previously item 3, which is discussion of the Bruce Avenue improvements. So we've talked about this item on several occasions. Most recently in December, you had asked staff to go back and do a little more data collection and also getting the input from the neighborhood. So we did both of those things at the beginning of the year. A survey went out to all the residents on Bruce Avenue, including those in Los Gatos, and then also one property on San Benito because it has frontage on Bruce Avenue. We got a response of about 36% of those. They were sent a letter in the mail that had a link. Most people provided comments on the links. A couple I got in paper form and included those in the responses. We also collected traffic data over a 24-hour period on a dry day, on a Thursday, on a school day to catch a most representative day of traffic going down Bruce Avenue. So included in your packet was this image, and let's see if I can get this to go away. I can't. Okay, so this was the data collected. There were 2 obvious spikes in traffic count data, which are the bars here, as you would expect during the morning and afternoon school drop-off and pickup times. That wasn't necessarily the peak in the speed. There was no very clear peak in the speed, but the ones that we did have actually were kind of in the later morning, more about the 10 o'clock hour. So the red line on this image is the speed limit, and the speed limit on Bruce Avenue is 20 miles per hour, which is due to the school. Most residential streets are 25 miles per hour. The city approved a resolution several years ago to reduce the speed limit because it is in the proper school zone. So from that data, the 85 percentile data, which is what most municipalities use to judge whether or not there is a speeding or traffic issue, was above the 20 miles per hour. It was below 25 miles per hour, which would be a typical residential street, but since, like I said, it's around a school, it's 20 miles per hour. So we would consider this a speeding issue and something that we could use measures to reduce the speed. So that was the results of the speed and count data. The results from the survey were a little more mixed. There wasn't really any clear priorities when you put all the data, just the raw data out. It was all very mixed. The other category, we did get a lot of good comments, which I included in your packet, but none of them really had a trend that fit into any of these other categories to bump them in any way. So I manipulated the data a bit to put in people's first and second and third and fourth choices and then omitting the other choice to see if maybe there was more of a clear trend of what people were concerned about. And it came out also pretty mixed, but overall speeding came out as the primary concern, where parking was a lesser concern for that particular question. We also asked them to rank potential scenarios of having a full sidewalk, which may require removing of parking on one side of the street, a narrow sidewalk that would retain parking, or just doing drainage and pavement improvements. And overall, the no sidewalk was the preferred option. However, when you asked another question, would you be willing to give up parking versus not, it was pretty split, 50-50. Like I said before, it was less than 50% responses from the community that we had sent surveys out to. And also something to consider, they are not obviously the only users of the street. School children, people who also live in the neighborhood walking their dog, but not necessarily on Bruce Avenue, other users of the street than those who just live there. So like I said, I included a lot of the comments that we got in a separate attachment. One theme that came out a bit was the desire to have it as a rural feeling of the street. I included some language in your staff report from the Federal Highway Administration, and really the current standard is to have some kind of walkway. Maybe not necessarily a full concrete sidewalk or standard sidewalk that you would see like on Dave's Avenue, but something to delineate pedestrians from roadway, and bicyclists, frankly, because these are children, from roadway traffic. So I put a couple alternative walkways examples in your staff report. They're up here on the screen. Obviously not a full sidewalk, but something that delineates the road traffic from the foot traffic. And I think,
Is that one on the right?
yep.
Is that like a little bike path? The one on the right side that looks like it's protected? It looks like there's a line going down the middle of it. Is that what?
Oh, you mean like to the right of the
On
concrete?
the right side picture, there's the left and right side picture. The one on the right side, on the left side of the picture on the right, there's like, is that
Right.
like a little pathway with a line down the middle? Is that like a?
I don't think so. Something tells me that's where they cut the asphalt to put in the concrete, and then they just patched it back.
Okay,
would be
okay,
my guess.
Okay. I tried to expand the picture and I couldn't, so,
Yeah, because it goes different,
yeah,
different widths too, so it looks like a patch.
yeah.
But either of those would probably eliminate some parking.
It would eliminate all the parking.
Half, maybe.
Okay. So staff recommendation, while a sidewalk as a standard sidewalk is clearly not in favor of those who answered the survey, staff still recommends to do some kind of pathway, whether it be this, whether it be something else that can be designed for this area, considering the only reason that there is a speeding problem is because it's in a school zone. It would make sense to put in a walkway. So the way this typically works is I give a staff report, the commission gives questions, and then it's open for public comment and goes back to commission, just for those of you who don't regularly come to public meetings. So that's the end of my staff report. If you have any questions prior to public comment, please feel free.
So
Go right ahead.
one of, you gave several, so I think it has to be studied to figure out exactly what will fit.
Yes.
But one of the options, I mean, besides a full-blown sidewalk that two people could walk side by side very comfortably, there was also a narrower pathway.
Correct.
I remember reading this, right?
Yes.
That necessarily wouldn't take out any parking.
Correct. Right. Though it would be a what we consider a substandard. Yes.
Pathway.
Yes. But would leave enough right of way to have parking on both sides of the street and then keep the roadway portion wide enough to allow for emergency service access.
And the only thing I think when we're looking at this, just to remind everybody, because I live on Highway 9 right here, we do have that pathway and it's asphalt and it's a curb, so it's raised.
Right.
But cars, because there's driveways coming all the time, so it goes up and it goes down, and it goes up and it goes down, we have no parking bike lane signs that keep getting hit, but there are trucks and everybody parks there anyway. So I think if there is a solution found, I just think we should keep that in mind, that it has to look like it's a pathway, not like, oh, I can get my car off the street and park here. Because that's what's happened to us. Thank you for all this.
Yes, that's a lot of great analysis. Thank you very much. Should we go ahead and?
Yeah, if
see
there's no
any-
other questions, yes.
Do they need to fill out a comment card, or is that not necessary?
Not just state your name if you can, and use the microphone, please.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne Nestor, and I live directly on Bruce Avenue. I'm actually about 3 doors down from Poppy Lane. So the walkways thing, just to be blunt, it's an absurd notion that doing that will solve the problems on Bruce Avenue. When you consider the fact that speed is and will always be the primary issue, what needs to happen is something to slow the cars down. So if you put any kind of walkway in, you will virtually eliminate traffic. I mean, you will virtually eliminate parking on that street. The street isn't that wide to begin with, and even a walkway like this is going to take up parking all the way down one side of the street, which, I mean, we can't afford to lose that kind of parking. Number two, there aren't that many kids that walk up and down the street. I know this because I have 3 children, and my daughter walks to Fisher, and there's maybe 24 kids that walk up and down that street. There are hundreds of cars that drive up and down it. So when you look at a cost-benefit analysis, you're not going to get the benefit that makes the cost of that worthwhile, because that's not where the issue is. The issue is with the cars that refuse to slow down. And one of the issues that we brought up was, why can't we have some speed bumps? And the response that we keep getting is, well, emergency personnel. I've lived on that street for 10 years, And there have been a half a dozen times max in 10 years that emergency vehicles have driven down my street. So again, cost-benefit analysis and the concern, when you look at those things, it doesn't make any sense to say, oh, we can't put a speed bump because it might slow down emergency personnel when there aren't even emergency personnel going down the street that much. And I see residential communities everywhere that have some kind of a speed bump that will slow people. And it's really just between the stop sign at, what's the name of that? San Benito and Poppy. Between that, as it comes down the hill towards Poppy, that and getting a bump out at the corner that forces cars to stop at the stop sign instead of peeling around the corner where they're going to run into the kids that are walking. Those are the two primary issues. And adding that sidewalk in isn't going to address any of that. So that's a really huge concern for the people that live on that street. I mean, I have been standing out in front of there before, and I have to like wave at people and scream at them to slow down. I shouldn't have to do that. Putting in a walkway isn't going to solve that. And putting in a walkway isn't going to address the huge volume of cars, because more kids aren't going to walk up and down, because most of the people that are driving are the people that live at the other end of town and they're too far to walk. And most of the kids that are walking are actually coming through the community that's there along Poppy. That's where most of the walkers are coming from. So you have to address the corner of Bruce and Poppy where there's hazards for children, and you have to address the speed on Bruce. Those are the two primary things that need to be addressed. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is David Collins, and I too live on Bruce Avenue, and my wife and I have lived there for almost 30 years, and we live right across the street from Suzanne. I could not agree more with Suzanne's comments. The core issue is speed. It's not drainage, although that is the small problem for our particular property, but the real problem is speed, and I was puzzled when I saw the flyer that came out. There was no mention of how the sidewalks would calm the traffic and the speed. There's no evidence to say that a sidewalk, whether it's wide or narrow, is going to slow people down. And I think I asked you about that, and you said the evidence, there is no real conclusive evidence, is very contradictory. So the idea of considering sidewalks of any kind as a traffic calming measure hasn't been addressed at all. So that's one issue. I'd be curious. You said you got a 36% response. What was the total number of ballots that were sent out on the streets? What were the raw numbers?
16 of 45 were returned.
Yes.
16 of 45.
Responses.
Okay. Because I think, we have had this conversation on Bruce Avenue for a long time, and especially in the last couple of months, about sidewalks and speed. And I think I haven't met anybody who wants a sidewalk or who doesn't think speed is the problem. So I think maybe a more aggressive outreach, maybe going door to door and getting actual, opinions, might be a more accurate way to gauge the intensity of feeling on Bruce Avenue. As Suzanne said, the idea of speed bumps or speed humps is something that ought to be tried as a way to slow this traffic down. You could even experiment with it. You could try those rubber temporary speed bumps and see what happens. See if it works. But in my experience on other streets in Los Gatos and Monte Sereno, they do work. They're effective. I don't know why they're a low-cost alternative to solve what is the core problem. So I guess that's about all I've got to say. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, Louise Kirkbride. I've been at 17705 Bruce Avenue for 30 years. I live right across the street from Eric Wade. We're in construction right now. When I have to repark my car because the driveway's in use, I have to park at the other end of the block. So parking is a problem. If I simply actually don't understand what the goal is. What do we think a sidewalk's going to accomplish? I don't believe that there's a direct correlation between speed and sidewalks. If so, LA is designed entirely wrong. If it's to protect people, are we going to force kids to walk on it? Are we going to force dog walkers to walk on the sidewalk? I mean, no. It may happen, it may not happen. I suspect they're going to walk in the street anyway. Kids do that. Bikes are going to be in the street anyway. So I don't see what the point is of modifying the street, taking away the rural feel, to accomplish something I don't think it's going to accomplish. And I think just impinging on the parking is a big problem. I mean, I think we've got a parking problem. We have a speed problem. To me, it gets manifest as 8 o'clock in the morning, the ninja moms come along and won't let me back out of my driveway, you know. But if you slowed them down, yeah, in the Humvees. But if you slowed them down, then I think that would help that quite a bit. But I really don't see what the point of a sidewalk is. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm Carolyn Cannon, and I live at the other end of Bruce Avenue. Speed is an issue for us as well. And the parking. Those are the two priorities that we have. Our son's car was parked in front of the rock wall in front of our house, and a woman came from Winchester, was speeding so much that when she hit the car, it raised up this high onto the rock wall. So the people are using it as a drag strip. Even at the stop sign of San Benito, between there and Winchester, they're upping their speed so that they break down at Winchester. So speed is a really big issue. The other comment I want to make for my husband is he walks up on the street that's after Cavan, further up Dave's Avenue, where gutters have just been put in that are just raised for like drainage, as opposed to making sidewalks. I'd like to propose that that be looked at as an alternative.
At Palos Verdes?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you for your time. Sir.
Hi, my name's Larry Hughes. I live on corner of Bruce and Poppy, and my wife Carol and I have lived there for about 7 years. I agree with everything that's been said so far. The really obvious problem there is speed on that street, and the speed is the most dangerous going to and from school every day. And then during the summers, that is a neighborhood that people pass through off of Dave's as a shortcut to get to Winchester. And that's not only just a line of traffic, that's people that want to move pretty quick because they're trying to go through there to pick up speed anyway. So speed is a problem. Parking is a problem. It's just inconceivable to all of us, I think, to understand how an idea of sidewalks came to anyone as a solution to what seems to us to be just a clear speed problem, and that sidewalks could perhaps make even more dangerous because the roadway is going to be narrower. So I think if you had more input, it's unfortunate that you don't have more input from the people on that street, but that's what we talk about, the cars that speed through there every day, especially at busy times. Just a procedural question. So you're the Better Streets Commission, and you will do a report and recommendation eventually to the City Council. Is that the way it works?
Yes. Technically, you're not supposed to be asking questions, but yes, that's true.
Okay, so I guess I better not ask another one. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your time. Yes, sir.
I just have a quick question to you. Will this be made available publicly to us?
Yeah, it's on the website right now.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I want to put another fine point on, I think you're hearing that speed is the issue. I think you've got that message pretty clearly. But the parking, I want to say something about that. You know, in the flyer, the flyer that was sent around, it had the illustrations showing what each of the alternatives would do.
it really, and you got your results on parking as a secondary concern, and it probably is, but I don't think people really understood, the few people who actually looked at the ballot, I don't think they really understood what that would actually mean to the character of the street. What it would mean is that if any kind of sidewalk or maybe a pathway, which was not on the ballot at all, if there would be no parking on one side of the street, which is probably not going to make people on that side happy. But on the other side of the street, there's going to be, if all cars are forced over to that other side, there's going to be a wall of cars on that side of the street. And that, I don't think the ballot or the flyer was very clear about that as being a very real impact on the character of the street. So I think there's a lot of opinion out there that needs to be examined much more carefully. But I think you're getting the clear message anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, just one other point I wanted to make is that you mentioned that your recommendation was based on the fact that the current standard is for some kind of walkway. And I would just point out that I find it a little bit troubling that the only motivation for recommending is because that's a current standard rather than that's because what makes sense for our neighborhood, when all evidence shows that's not what makes sense for our neighborhood, not for the look of it, not for the usability of it, not for cost benefit. Again, as a member of the community, I don't think that it makes even one iota of sense to spend who knows how many dollars of our town's money putting a half walkway that isn't really going to be used that much versus putting in something that really addresses directly the concerns that we have as members and residents of that street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Cannon, Bruce Avenue. If you're concerned that our input tonight is not representative of the rest and it's only 36%, I would be more than happy to go door to door, and I will guarantee at least I can get 75 to 80% at least input. They would probably back up what we're saying. So I think we are representative of the majority of people on the Bruce Avenue. Thank you.
Is that it? Well, thank you all very much for your time. This was just an initial phase to try to get a general feeling for what people were interested in, and I think, and what concerns people have. I think we did a very good job of learning priorities and what people are for and what people are against.
Jessica, I have a question.
Sure.
So my understanding is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to figure this out. So I think addressing some of the thought of what I've heard is you can make a path that doesn't look like a sidewalk but is separated.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. You can make a path, most likely, we haven't studied it, that could still allow parking on both sides.
Correct.
Keep the parking. And then my understanding is that adding a path or a sidewalk or whatever, some modality there, would narrow the existing, so along with the drainage issues, and we know it's on our pavement, it's a priority. So I think one of the things is the city needs to work on that street. And Doreen and I walked it, and there were a lot of places where we were tripping over curbs, and we were, it was up and it was down, and the drainage. So once that's going to have to be done anyway. So this is, should other things be done, and should it be all planned as one project so that it's done correctly and with foresight and good use of public money? But if we do some kind of pathway, my understanding would be that helps narrow the street and helps do some traffic calming. And
so it depends on how you do it. The idea of a formal sidewalk is obviously a light gray, so that similar to a lot of streets in town, people have parking strips, right? And some people have planted things in there, but a lot of people, it's pavement for them to park in front of their homes. So that visually, from looking down a street, just looks like a big, wide street. There's no real difference to anyone, especially because it's not striped. there's no difference between the travel lane and then the parking. It gives the appearance of a wider street than it actually is. So if you added something like a sidewalk that's obviously concrete in a different color, that visually narrows the street all by itself. You add that with striping where people are more likely to stay in a specific lane, that also narrows the street. And that is a proven, and I'm not sure if I put links in the staff report, but I can provide them, where you have a narrower street, people drive slower down it. That is something that's recorded.
Yes. The other thing is, could you speak, and I've heard fire department speak, I've heard BFK consultants speak,
Right.
I've heard lots of, and I know there's lots of requests for speed bumps or speed humps or that kind of thing, but I know there's places, I don't know if we've done it, or I used to live in Los Gatos too, where, you know, then you have people revving to get up to them, and then you have kids revving when they get off, and then you have noise, and you have a lot of, they don't necessarily, I've seen them taken out because the residents then were not happy with the speed bump. So can you kind of give us just a general speed bumps, speed humps, and then kind of the issues that they solve and the issues that come up from them?
So in general, emergency vehicles, specifically fire departments, don't like speed bumps because it slows them down, and in their opinion, every second counts. So that's just the general baseline of why many communities don't use them. In places where they've been installed and removed, sometimes noise is an issue, not always, but that is a complaint that comes up commonly. Another issue is general pavement maintenance. It's much with people who do speed up or, you know, do not slow down for them, and just generally going up and down in a vehicle wears on the pavement more quickly. That's another reason many municipalities don't commonly put in speed bumps, because of general pavement maintenance. I know in Los Gatos they have a formal process of requesting speed bumps that we don't have here. I would say if you use their metric for this street, it would be something that would start a process. For example, when we did the Palos Verdes work and we did the speed study for there, that didn't come back as any kind of speeding issue with that 85 percentile, because that street was 25 miles per hour and it just didn't meet the criteria. This street would meet that Los Gatos criteria of the starting of investigation of speed bumps. I don't know if it would end up at the end that it would be recommended, but at least that's something by the Los Gatos standard would be considered. And I would say the Los Gatos standard for evaluating that kind of traffic calming is pretty standard throughout the Bay Area.
And what about can you do them on a temporary basis? What does the city have to, because I know when you start changing things and there's liability issues and stuff, is it a big deal to do a temporary thing? Is that done?
I guess it depends on what you mean by big deal. Yes, there are temporary measures you can take. So there are definitely speed bumps you can put down that are plastic, that are removable, that aren't permanent. I would say if you suggested doing something like this for Bruce Avenue, that you would do that before you decided to do a larger project where you put in curb and gutter or improve the street pavement, because if you take that out, now you have a big grind out where you took out your temporary speed bump. So I think for something like that, if you're not just going to go for it on a permanent basis, that you would do the pilot or whatever you'd like to call it prior to doing any other improvements on the street.
Do you know what the process, Los Gatos' process looks like for evaluating speed bumps?
They do a speed study. I think there's a percentage of residents who have to be in favor of it. And there are some other criteria that, frankly, I can't recall off the top of my head. There's like 3 or 4 different points that they have to hit.
And I believe at one time we were given a list of streets you absolutely couldn't do it on by the police department.
That is true,
And
yes.
this wasn't on
Bruce
that.
was not one of them, no. Dave's is, which is parallel, obviously.
And then the other thing we looked at it during, you and I looked at it quite a bit, was that corner of Poppy and Bruce, the bulb out that we talked about
Right.
on the Dave's Avenue side, but also on the other side, that the sight line, where the property...
Right, where there's like heavy vegetation, there's bamboo and like cacti on there.
There were, the majority of kids we saw
There was a
were
ton,
coming down.
Yeah, out of that community in Los Gatos.
Yeah,
and then,
they just kind of shoot right through there.
And that when you were a car and you were coming up Bruce and you were going to make a right on Poppy, those kids were just shooting across that
Sure.
there. And you couldn't see because of the vegetation there. And there is no sidewalk there
Right.
too, so. I think that needs to be part of it, and I think that's a huge safety issue from what I
At that
saw.
intersection, yeah.
I'm sorry, but you're specifically recommending the bulb out there?
Oh, definitely bulb out, but we need to do something to continue the sidewalk that comes from Poppy, where that community is used to be the Pistol.
There's like two houses that
There's
go,
two houses that don't have the sidewalk, and those kids are just shooting across that street. And if you're a car, you can't see them coming. And
there were a lot of
traffic.
scooters too. I mean,
I don't remember the details of that one.
Yeah, there were a lot of traffic there. Yeah. So I think that needs to be part of this, and that's probably a higher priority to me than the sidewalk, just from
yeah.
what I saw out there. Yeah.
Speed humps come up a lot, and your suggestion of a temporary one I thought was an interesting one. This could be a good time to explore that possibility, just so we get more experience as a group with speed humps. I like the sounds of trying a temporary one.
I would say prior to doing that, you may want to have some kind of standard for evaluating that citywide requests for that type of thing.
That seems like a very good idea.
And
Would it make sense if we like kind of
Lost
copied?
We
Los
could
Gatos?
agendize that and look at
Could we do that rather than recreate the wheel?
Yes.
so if we did that and we came up with some policy, then it would be recommended to the council, and then they would review it and do.
Right.
I think that sounds smart. Yeah. I mean,
Can I
even
make
if
a
we don't.
comment, or- I remember when, not too long ago, when they put the temporary speed bumps on Wedgwood, because Wedgwood used to always have a problem with speeding, by all the residential, but the golf course on the one side. And they put those temporary ones up, and then they did go ahead and put the regular ones up, and I thought it made a huge difference. I go that route a lot.
It'd be nice to have something quantifiable, because if we made a recommendation and if we copied Los Gatos or something similar that made sense, then because I know
That's
a
good to
lot
have
of
a standard.
it is good to have a standard, because I think a lot of people throw out speed bumps, just like as an easy option, but it's not as easy when you think about everything that goes into that decision. So,
And I
with you.
do like too, if they could be, if it became and they could be temporary, the neighborhood could evaluate, is it helping? What are the good things that have come out of this? Are they causing other problems? Are they
Yeah, and
put in the
maybe
wrong
we
place
would get
by
more than
somebody's driveway?
36% feedback.
Yeah. Because then you have something that's, you're testing,
Okay, so how do we, other than that, how do we move forward? I think it's pretty clear that, it seems clear to me that the residents don't want to lose any parking. Any solution that we come up with will keep the parking. They want to keep the rural feeling for the neighborhood, but they definitely want to address speed. We haven't talked much about road specifics on narrowing the look of the road. Did you mention lines, putting in lines?
Yeah, striping.
Striping, and so those are things. It seems like bulb outs, road narrowing via striping, trying a speed bump are the three obvious things to do.
Is there any thought of doing bulb out or narrowing something where San Benito comes in to slow traffic there too?
That's also an option.
I think it would make sense. Those are pretty effective.
There's probably not enough room to do. You remember how you said the roundabouts? There's probably not enough room to do a roundabout, but I've seen them in other parts of. No, but I've seen them in other parts of Los Gatos where they have a much wider intersection and it slows down people going through.
So it seems like we want to come up with a new set of ideas to bring back to the community that incorporates what we've learned so far. And that's.
And I'm wondering, is it that, or do we need to work with, a designer or a consultant that could say, okay, if whatever we decide, if it's just traffic calming, what does that look like? With the striping, with bulb outs, how would that look? If it's, restriping and stuff and putting in a pathway, is that a possibility? I mean, right now, we don't know.
I would say probably your decision point for getting a consultant involved is what, excuse me, what you would like to do or what should be done for the drainage. Because if it's desired to put in concrete curb and gutter, that's something that requires topography. That's something that requires a lot of steps. And frankly, after that, putting in a sidewalk or something else is just lines on a page. Really, the hard part is getting the topography right for the drainage.
Well, you have to address drainage with the pavement problem?
I mean, not necessarily. You can grind it out and place it back, and the pavement will be in very good condition, but the drainage will be exactly the same. I would say if you get into something like putting in concrete drainage, and then you have striping for your traffic issues, that does start to get away from the rural feel. If that's something that is a high priority concern, I think obviously a sidewalk definitely takes away from the rural feel, but I'm sure there would be residents who would say putting in concrete curb and gutter and striping all the way down the street also does that as well.
Is it possible to address the drainage concerns with asphalt?
I mean, you can put in like an asphalt curb, but that would cause parking issues because you can put in like on Palos Verdes, that's not like a straight curb. You can't really do a curb like that out of asphalt. Like you're only going to get a straight curb out of asphalt.
So Palos Verdes is concrete then, the drainage?
Yes.
How will the drainage be addressed, given there's a low point kind of in the middle of the street? I mean,
it would involve regrading the road and then getting it into some kind of inlet. And there are drainage pipes under that street, so it might include introducing a new inlet on the low point.
is there a chance that would cost more than everything else? I don't know how expensive of a project
no,
that is.
Since there's already a pipeline now. It's really just cutting a hole in the street and putting in pipes. If there were no drainage in the area, that would be a very expensive, but there is.
Would it obviously save the city long-term on street maintenance to do that?
I mean, any kind of drainage improvement on any street really improves pavement life.
So I'd somehow like to think about alternatives that narrow the street, potentially create a more safe place for people to walk. Not sure how to move forward. Does anybody have any suggestions?
Well, I'd like to see if we can get the information from Los Gatos and see if we can go down that route of like the temporary speed hump to see, if we can use that to help Monte Sereno create a standard, and if we establish that standard, if Bruce meets that standard, which it sounds like it might, if we copy Los Gatos's, then we can start taking steps towards evaluating that, and then it sounds like there's a lot of different variables, but that's one of them, and then a path or something might be another one to consider, but they kind of all have to happen together.
But does it make sense to try to look at what else we would do? Like, I think whether or not you put in a speed hump, you're going to want to look at bulb outs.
Oh gosh, yeah, no,
so-
they need those no matter what,
Yeah,
especially
so-
at Bruce and Poppy.
So it almost seems like we could try to move forward on what the street would look like, whether or not it has, and you kind of do the speed hump thing in parallel,
Right?
because we're not going to make any final decisions in the near future.
No,
And how does that intersect with, I know we have the pavement management report coming up. If we leave this long enough, we're going to have potholes, which are almost like speed
Right,
bumps.
no,
Because it's getting pretty bad.
Right. Well, it would be deferred. it wouldn't be cost effective to do pavement maintenance and then go in and saw cut it to put in whatever other improvements.
But it's not planned for 2020, is it, anyway?
No, it was not, because we were having this conversation.
Does the city have funding to do, I mean, besides the pavement management project, to do the bulb outs, or would we need to go for funding?
So that is something that comes around in the budget phase. I think that question might be better addressed in one of our other agenda items as far as like general funding for roadway projects with the council. But yeah, it's all kind of dependent on the council. The past 2 years, they've been very receptive and put money towards improvements. That's why we have the Blanchard and now the Palos Verdes improvements. And I would expect them to be the same this budgeting year, but there's no guarantee of that.
And because this is on, not a safe routes to school, but on a main school roadway, is there any county or federal? It'd be Monte Sereno money.
It would be Monte Sereno money. Just typically, if you're doing something safe route to school, they want to see a bike lane and or a sidewalk.
So would part or any of this be part of the pavement budget?
So what we've had in the past few years is two different pots of money. One is just for pavement maintenance rehabilitation, and then the other one has been for these neighborhood improvement projects, which also include pavement rehabilitation as part of that project. It would be in that latter category.
As in, some of it would be pavement rehabilitation?
Oh, yes, that would be part of the project regardless. It just wouldn't be part of that line item. That's the PMP, because that's for maintenance, not for like this would be considered new construction.
So that would be, the entire cost would be a separate line item we would.
In the budget,
and
yes.
that the council approve.
Right. The neighborhood improvement project would be this project on Bruce Avenue that does this, that.
So just to give vision, if I had a vision for this, I would like to see a path that's kind of like the two that Jessica had up there that was on the left, that was asphalt, but it had a curb that separated it, and I'd like it marked as pedestrian or something so people didn't park on it. But that would keep kind of a rural thing, but also address when we walked and we're falling over things and, it was going up and down and we didn't know. So I would like to see that. I would like to see striping on for car striping, so that was narrowed a little bit. And I'd like to see, the drainage addressed, and I'd like to see us do an attempt at speed bumps, and I'd like to see, any kind of traffic calming bulb outs that we could do at San Benito and at Poppy. And the sight line at Poppy, if we could finish the sidewalk on Poppy, so
that short little segment.
That's if it's possible to do that and keep the parking. Because I think we do have the speed issue, which has to correlate with this project because of the striping and some kind of narrowing of the lanes a little bit. But that's also the bulb outs, and that's also...
So how do we see what's feasible of the things? Because I agree with what Joanne said. How do we see what's feasible?
So just so I repeat, so I know what. So you were saying some type of pathway, the bulb outs, and I'm sorry, you said something else.
Striping.
Striping, and then the traffic calming through
bumps. Mm-hmm. I mean, all of those things are feasible. You can engineer anything, and there is right of way for all of those things. So that could be the project if that's what we want to move forward with. But yeah. So yes, if you're asking, are all four of those things feasible on Bruce Avenue? The answer is yes.
And we're not saying, because I see hands in the audience, I don't know if we can do anything. We're not saying do it. We're just saying look at it. We're not saying even recommend it at this point. It's just to say.
Just want to see what that would look like. Right.
It's possible.
I would say though, if the speed humps is something, that road that we want to go down in general for the city and specifically for Bruce Avenue as a pilot and not as a immediate permanent fixture, that needs to come first. And then we would spend our design funds on some other street, because you would have to wait for that time with the speed humps and see if they're effective and all that. And then that time you could be spending your design dollars on some other project.
So can we, at our next meeting, try to adopt some sort of standard for the city of Monte Sereno?
That can absolutely be agendized.
Could we do that as a separate meeting? I don't imagine, like a public meeting that we could, maybe a workshop. I'm just thinking.
Rather than wait 2 months?
Yeah,
Try to
and
get it on,
hash it
is it possible to do that?
That's a good question. I would have to ask this. If you want that to be a standalone, public meeting for speed humps, that's a question for the city manager. If you just want to have a special Better Streets Commission meeting and that's an item, that we can definitely do.
Yeah, and almost like just a workshop for us to kind of hash it out.
Well, I don't think you can do it in a workshop. It has to be an official meeting that that the public knows about.
Yeah.
But could we call a special meeting, like maybe next month, like in our off month, just so we can
You can call a
get
special
that
meeting
done?
whenever you would like.
Because
No, what do you
then we
think?
Kind of move it forward.
I know, because every other month is like, then
Yeah.
we're just waiting and waiting.
Yeah.
So if we could, before then, just get even at the meeting, get Los Gatos's criteria. And then if we could adopt that at the next meeting, then our following meeting, we could recommend that maybe we start going down the path with analyzing Bruce Avenue and the speed humps are temporary.
What I like about that is, I think the bulb outs and I think the striping or going in possible path will affect speed and help reduce speed. What I like about speed bumps, especially on a temporary basis, is that it's what the neighborhood wants, and we can see how effective it is. So anything else that we do, if this is effective, will only, I would think, help more. And so if it's done alone, then you kind of evaluate the effectiveness rather than, okay, now we have a finished project, what really
No, that's a good
works
idea.
here,
Yeah, no, that's good. Do we want to pick a date? Do you have to do that now? Should we wait to hear from you if?
Yeah, let me talk to the city manager and then we can pull it and then we can notice the neighborhood as well.
Okay, perfect. Sounds like a plan.
But it almost seems like noticing the neighborhood would be a later phase, because first we kind of have to approve a policy.
I agree. I think since we've been having this conversation with this neighborhood, that they'd be interested. Definitely this would be noticed just in general and put on next door, because speed humps are, like I said, things that get asked for in the entire community. So I'm sure people from other neighborhoods would be interested in that meeting.
Yeah, but the off month meeting next month is just for us to adopt some standard
But it
for.
have to be a public meeting.
Right, it could
Right.
be, but it's like,
A little dry.
yeah, I mean,
'cause
it's
it's
going to
not
apply to
site-specific,
everybody. Yeah,
right.
it's going to apply to everybody, not just that neighborhood. So,
That, we still need to get some direction on this, right?
But are you saying we should table the other improvement until
If
we
that-
evaluate this?
I would say so. If speed bumps is something that we're considering and especially temporary for this street, then the other improvements should be tabled until that gets sorted out.
Is there a distance, I imagine there is, between speed bumps at a 20 mile per hour zone? How far apart do they have to be? And you can't put them in somebody's driveway, and you probably can't put them in a corner, and
There's definitely standards, yes. I don't know them off the top of my head, but that would definitely be part of it.
can you find those out for, so we know that when we're adopting our standard or whatever? That would be helpful.
Yep.
Because I think on Eaton there's 2. On Wedgwood there's 2 or 3?
I think there's 3.
3.
Yeah. Austin Way has a couple, but Saratoga.
Yeah.
So, should somebody make a proposal that we,
So,
do we need to?
I think an official recommendation to evaluate a speed hump policy for the city would be a good formal recommendation. And then I have noted here that we're going to consider the other improvements for Bruce after a time that the speed hump issue for the city has been evaluated.
Is there anything we can do about that Bruce Poppy corner? Like the sidewalk we were talking about or that all needs to be done together?
Anything permanent would need to be done together.
So then we would bring this same issue to the next. Continue it? Continue
Because it
that.
all has to be done together. I mean, as much as I'd love to get that done quicker, I mean, we need to do it thoughtfully. And if we're going to evaluate, since we heard so many people say that, you just don't want to do it because they want them, but if we evaluate them thoughtfully and it ends up happening, it does all have to happen together. And we've heard them, from the neighborhood. I think it makes sense to.
So this issue would be brought back in 2 months then?
Well, I'm thinking what Jessica's recommending that we want to evaluate the speed hump first.
Right.
Which is going to take more than 2 months.
Yeah.
And then come back and look at everything after we've decided if speed humps are a good idea or not on that street. Legal and a good idea.
And then we need to see if they are done, if they're effective, and then.
Right. I would say if the way it panned out is we established some kind of standards for speed humps, we put in some kind of temporary measure on Bruce Avenue, then we evaluated that it would put any kind of permanent measure into this, 2021 for this specific street.
Well, I'm going to guess that the residents would rather have it done right rather than just do it quickly. I mean, so, you've been on we've been living there 7 or 30 years. I mean, we should be as thoughtful as we can about it, and it's just one step at a time, but at least it's moving now.
So could someone make a motion to ask Jessica to investigate a policy for speed humps in Monte Sereno?
Is that what we're doing? Okay. I'm going to make a motion that Jessica comes back with information regarding a standardized policy, what Los Gatos has, so that we can evaluate that as it relates to Monte Sereno at our next meeting.
Or possibly at a special meeting.
Special meeting.
If not, then at the next meeting if we can.
Hopefully a special meeting.
I second that.
Thank you.
And then do you need action on what we had to bring it back after action on the Bruce Avenue improvements?
Not a formal, no. I do need you to vote on that recommendation, though, that you just seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would encourage you to submit written comments if you have anything else you'd like to add. We want to hear from you.
And your neighbors.
Yeah.
Where do we submit them? Just to the City Hall website?
Yes.
Or at email address?
Yeah.
Or to me directly, yeah.
And obviously, no decisions will be made without
There'll be
talking
plenty
to
of
the community
notice.
more. So don't.
Jessica, where's your contact information?
You know what, I am so sorry. Give me just one moment. I will grab stack.
Thank you for your time. Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you
for
very
your
much for
time.
coming.
Thank you.
It's Jessica at cityofmontesereno.org.
Is it?
Yeah, right there. Jessica at cityofmontesereno.org. Easy to remember.
Like that.
I think it's smart to have some policy because,
Yeah.
people come in and are like, want speed humps. It's like, well, if you do a study,
But they got it, but
yeah, they got it, but I didn't know that there was a list that we had been given or exists.
Thank
that
you.
It's like, you may not
Bye-bye.
have them on these streets.
I don't think we were there when they had that.
I don't think
That
so,
was
but that's helpful because if it's on the list, then the answer's no.
Right.
End of story. So at least we're,
And around the same time, the officer came in and talked about it and said that it's very common that people want to get rid of them after they have them because of the noise they make.
That's why, the idea of doing it temporarily, I think makes sense. And I didn't see any complaints, pushing off the improvements while we evaluate this, so.
All right, item 1.
Wow, that cleared out.
So this is a presentation that I'll also be giving to the city manager or city council on Tuesday. So any input you all provide here, I'll be giving to them verbally at the meeting since that agenda's already been published. So the pavement management program status report. So I think a big question I've gotten on this is, why are we doing this again? Because we have to. The city is required by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, or MTC, to evaluate our pavement condition every so many years. So our last evaluation was done in 2016 for our 2017 report. This evaluation was done in 2019, and we received it in 2020. We got a grant to do this work, so the city, I think, only put in a couple $1,000s for this project. The MTC kind of dictates what this involves. So we have to use their software, we have to use their consultant, and so that's why this came about. So a pavement management program, for those of you who don't know, is a tool for us to make cost-effective decisions. They go out, they evaluate all of the streets, and then they give us sample budgets and option scenarios to best get an overall average good street system. So it answers 4 main questions. What do we own, which we already knew? What condition is it in? And this is really good because we have a very clear comparison to several years ago from our 2016 report. What repairs are needed, so they give recommendations as to what kind of treatments to use, which do change over time as technologies change. And then how much money is required to do it. And like I said, we use the Street Saver software just like every other city in the Bay Area. So the condition is measured by something called the PCI, the Pavement Condition Index. It goes from 0 to 100, 70 to 100 being very good, 50 to 70 being fair, 25 to 50 being poor, and under 25 being very poor or failed. This is standardized. If you want me to get into it, I have some extra slides afterwards of how they determine this, but I didn't go out and do this. Some professional who does this every day went out and did this.
Sounds like a fun job.
But could you, I don't want to dig into it, but there was a comment about there's 2 different measurement systems in
Yes.
use, and do we need to know about both of them, or?
So, like I said, the consultant was chosen by the MTC, and they used, it's the same number categories, they just used different words. So for some reason, the fair category for them was good. So what I used in the staff report and also what's used here is the MTC standard, which also compares apples to apples from the old report.
From the prior one, yeah.
So just for examples, here's what a good street looks like. This is on Eaton. This is what a fair street looks like. Some cracks, but overall, and really no potholes, very good condition is what's considered fair. This is on Dave's Avenue. This is Seabury, which is actually the worst street in the city, and this is considered poor. It has a lot of cracks. It might be picking up in pieces, general failure in areas. And then this is considered a failed street, which this isn't in the city because we have gone to great lengths to repair the streets in the past 3 years. So, like I said, the lowest PCI street is Seabury at a 32. So this map is not great, but the colors give you an overall idea of where the good to poor streets are in the city. They break it up into arterials, collectors, and residentials. No surprise, Monte Sereno is mostly a residential street. The arterial is Winchester, and then the collector is the small part of Quito that the city owns. And so actually those 2 streets, their PCI is a little more difficult to alter because those need to be projects that we do with the other entities who own those streets. So really our main focus is the residential streets, which are the bulk of our streets anyway. So we've had marked improvement since 2016. We went from a PCI of 63 to 69. The council's goal was to get to 70 in 5 years, and it's been 3, and we're very, very close. Yeah, no, it's a nice picture, right? All the failed streets have been addressed, the poor have reduced and the goods have increased. So we've done a pretty good job of addressing some of the worst streets in the city. Overall, this puts us pretty much in line with our neighbors. I will say that this data from our neighbors is from 2018, so they probably had their own pavement management program, and their numbers are likely to increase as well, but I don't know that. But we're right in there. This average, way above the average statewide, which is nice. And then the MTC goal is 75, so everyone is a bit below that. The reason that the MTC goal is 75 is if you look at the slope around it gets steeper, right? So you're kind of, if you're just sitting at 70, you're kind of there on that edge where you really need to be on top of it before the street starts deteriorating more quickly. That's why the MTC recommends 75, so you're on the less steep end of that slope, a little more manageable. So obviously, to keep up a good condition street is much cheaper than rebuild a whole street, and that's also what this graphic is showing.
At one point, it said the goal, MTC goal, but it's really more of a recommendation.
Yes, right. We're not mandated to do that. We're really not mandated to keep it at any level, but that is the MTC goal for the entire Bay Area. And I would say there are some cities who have met that, but none in the South Bay. So the report went over several different funding scenarios. I'm not going to talk about much about 1 and 5 because 1 is unconstrained, where it's just you have all the money to throw at pavement, which no one does. And then the lowest scenario, number 5, is to do nothing, which is just not very wise. Also, the city gets formula funds that they can only use for pavement maintenance, so it makes no sense for the city just to hold on to that money. So scenario 2 is our current investment level. Our money comes from gas taxes, VRF, which is money from your vehicle registration funds, RMRA, or SB1, which is a newer fund, and then Measure B, which is money we've just gotten in the past few years. Scenario 3 is to maintain our current PCI just to float at 69, and then the other one is to increase the PCI by 5 points, which would put us at 74 and around the MTC goal.
Sure. On that. At one point, you say 1.39 million, and then you say 1.55 million for scenario 4, and that confused me.
Ooh. You know what? I would have to thank you for pointing that out. I won't say that to the council. I would have to look back at the main report.
The math says 155.
That's probably.
But
thank you.
You mean in scenario 4?
yeah.
So if we're at scenario 2, are those funds, is it necessary for them to go into this program? I mean, are they earmarked for this program?
So those funds they're restricted, and so they have to go into some kind of pavement or street project. So they don't necessarily have to go to pavement maintenance. They can go to bicycle lanes. They can go sidewalks. Anything. Right, they can go into our neighborhood improvements for drainage on. So it just has to be street related. So no, not necessarily do these funds need to go to pavement maintenance.
And then if we went to scenario 4, the extra 300,000 basically, that needs to come from somewhere else in Monte Sereno's budget?
Correct. I would also say that the values I have up here for scenario 2 are pretty conservative. These are attached to taxes. So if the economy goes down, taxes goes down, this goes down. But this, I would say for the next 5 years, even if the economy went down a bit, would still be reasonable numbers to expect in the next 5 years. So these are different scenarios. We have our current condition. I would say that all of them, as recommended by the report, would result in 1 or 2 failed streets, because the idea is to use money on your best streets first to keep them preserved, which means you're not spending some money on maintaining some of your poorer streets. But in general, the more money you spend, the more good streets you get. So, right, I would say these are all pretty comparable. They are all pretty straightforward. To your question, the funding gap, and I will check these numbers again, but I believe the shortfall would be about $60,000 a year. to go with the improving the PCI to 74. And the past few years, the council has approved to just fund that through the general fund. They may or may not do that again. Just kind of depends on when budget time comes around, what the feeling is of the council.
Yeah. Well, you repeatedly, whenever you talked about that, you just used the word transfer, which
Yes.
is really, so, but does that kind of mean transfer from somewhere, but we don't even know where? The council will figure that out?
It would be general funds, yes.
No, so is the general funds the annual budget, or is that the city's
Or do
savings?
we have a surplus or anything for like, capital projects that it would be transferred from?
So the city has just very basic accounts. So they have our annual budget from property taxes, and that fluctuates a little bit every year, and other sources of income. And then we have our reserves. So it just kind of depends on what the income source is in a given year, how much would come from reserves and how much would be just come from our
So
general budget.
like, for example, for scenario 4, the 60,000, you'd be transferring whatever wasn't covered by the council would make the decision, if they chose to do this. Whatever wasn't covered or couldn't be covered by the annual fund or general fund would come from reserves, right? Do we have reserves that could cover that?
Yes,
Okay.
I would say it.
Usually we're about 5 million, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, the budget has been in a surplus for the past several years. Not to say that it will continue, but that has been the situation.
The annual budget.
The annual budget, yes.
Well, I mean, it seems to me that your recommendation, scenario 4, I mean, it seems like you get the most bang for your buck in terms of getting that almost up to 75. I mean, in terms of, that makes the most sense.
Is there a way of quantifying, so if there's a $60,000 or $65,000 gap, that is funded so that you're ahead, you're at 74%, right? How much do you save because that pavement that you are working on now
Right.
that
Is less
not
to maintain.
declining,
Right.
So you're not at this point where you got to, is there a way to quantify that or not really? Or is that in the formula?
If they would have done a
Software they
10-year
have?
instead of a 5-year projection, it would have given us a
Right,
good,
yeah.
Right, you would have a better idea. I mean, there's definitely ways to estimate that. So that is something that,
Because if you spend 65, but you saved yourself 20, then you're only really spending 45, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Deferred maintenance versus,
right. I mean, that's the idea kind of with the unconstrained scenarios. You put all this money up front, and then for the next, 20 years, you're only spending $100,000 a year, but the money up front is the hard part.
and how much is that money if you invested and,
Right. So I think that was, more or less the conclusion that we're in a fair condition. We're at a trajectory to meet the council's original goal from 2016 to get to 70, which is a good condition, with the existing budget. With a supplement of $60,000 a year, which frankly, for the next few years, depending on the economy, may be covered by those formula funds, just kind of depending on what tax income is. We could get to somewhere closer to the MTC goal and over in the long run spend less on pavement.
Because I was going to say, theoretically, if you're at a 74, it's going to cost you less to, maintain, on an annual basis.
Right.
One thing that I found confusing or troubling was that it seems that when they look at the numbers, they include county-maintained streets, but yet that's not part of the financial side.
Oh, you mean the pavement condition includes the maintained streets, but the funding does not?
Yeah. I mean, what do the numbers look like if you just include streets that Monte Sereno has to pay for?
So the big chart of every street definitely includes the county maintained streets. It also includes streets that we only have partial responsibility for, but in the overall PCI, big numbers, those are taken out. So those aren't part of that calculation.
So the PCI, that's only what we have to pay for, what Monte Sereno has to maintain and pay for.
Solely has to pay for.
Right.
I would say Keto, there's a very small stretch that is our responsibility, but frankly, we wouldn't do that work until Saratoga or the county or whomever decides to come and do their whole 2-mile stretch, and then we just add on to it.
I mean, it was only mentioned in a footnote, but what I read, it said that, if I understood this correctly, streets with functional classification, NCR, which I believe Ridgecrest was, are included in Street Saver, but are not considered for inventory or budget calculations.
Right.
But if it's in Street Saver, doesn't that include it in the PCI number?
Yeah. I'm sorry, you mean the overall, so, do you have a page number on that?
I mean, I looked it up because I was just curious about these county streets, so I would search through this document for county. And so I'm just trying to understand, is Ridgecrest, for example, included
Right.
in our PCI?
It should not be. And so if it is included in there, it shouldn't be. And we did do a iterative process because they had a few private streets in there that are have a PCI related to them in this report, but aren't part of the calculation and not part of the map.
What is Street Saver? Is
That's the software the
software
consultant
that
uses.
they use?
Right.
Okay.
Consultants that must be friends with MTC.
I mean, there's a few. There isn't just one consultant for the whole Bay Area, but there's only 4. So yeah, I would say this consultant did Los Gatos' plan last year. So
Do you mind just confirming that?
yeah,
that
I can absolutely do that.
Because it just seems that what they're saying is it is included. That's how I interpreted it. And we don't care if it's SB1 or Measure B money. We lump it in one bucket.
Right. I mean, it has the same kind of requirements for it. It's as far as city budgeting goes, it's considered the same.
But
type
that
of
also
funds.
means we have to follow complete streets on any of this, correct?
Technically, yes, and I think that would be an issue. That it's certain types of streets, so that would be like a Winchester or a Ridgecrest, which we don't maintain, or collector streets like Vineland. That would be an issue, but that doesn't apply to most of the streets in the city because they're low volume residential.
So somebody should make a motion that we recommend you give this to the council or something like that? Is that what you
I
want?
guess is what we're looking for is a funding recommendation. So if you feel that scenario 2 and doing some kind of transfer every year to get to, I think it's like $310,000 a year, is what you recommend to get to a piece, or if the goal should be to get to 75 because currently the goal is 70. However you would like to phrase it.
Well, staff recommended 4, correct?
Right.
Which, I think most of us thought seemed very reasonable.
I think that seems very
So
reasonable.
is that what you want
Yeah,
us to
that would
say?
work for me.
You need to make a reservation.
Why, or just-
I mean, if you would like to include reasons, I will definitely include that in my oral report to council. If you would just like me to say that, and the Better Streets Commission concurred with my recommendation, that works as well. I mean, if you would like to state reasons, I would be happy to hear them.
Well, the reason would be we think it'll cost us less money in the long run.
I'd like to see it get us closer to the MTC's goals because I think, I think fiscally it's going to be better in the long run because it does not seem like it seems like we're in a position to make this decision.
To make a decision and to get closer to it.
To get as close as we
quickly.
can, yeah, because then we'll have that much more time before we deteriorate it down. So, I mean, I think it makes a lot of fiscal sense if we have the ability to do that, to get as close to the MTC's goal as possible. So close.
I think the progress so far has been amazing, so going a little bit above that. Kind of complete most of the.
So can I make a motion?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we recommend option 4 and believe that it'll cost the city the least amount of money in the long run.
I will second that motion. We have to vote?
Gotcha.
All those agree?
Aye.
wonderful presentation.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was a really great report, Jessica.
Next item is along the same vein, and I think this should be a pretty short discussion, is the 2020 Annual Pavement Improvement Project. So with the SB1 funds and the Measure B funds, the city is required to give them a projection of what streets they anticipate on doing in future years, and then later on you are required to report on what you actually did. And those don't need to match, but you are required to report that on both ends of a fiscal year. So last year, we recommended several streets that actually ended up being on San Jose water line replacement project. So they're being trenched right up the middle this summer, making them poor candidates to resurface this year. So with that, also in that time, the city, or town of Los Gatos, approached the city about resurfacing Bicknell, which is one of those streets that we have shared responsibility for. And that was really a perfect opportunity for the city to put in very little staff time and a fair share of, a cost-effective amount of money to do that. So the city has committed to that already. So some of the money has already been spent, more or less. So what that leaves us with for our 1920 program, which would be done in like April, May, June of this year, are a lesser amount of streets because there's less money, and then streets that were not part of San Jose Water's water main replacement program. So those specifically are Constitution and Seabury. Seabury, like we said in the last report, is one of the worst streets in the city. Constitution has a drainage issue that has a separate budget in the city budget to be remedied this year, and so that pavement will be done after the drainage improvements have been completed.
How did that come about? Was that before this committee?
The Constitution drainage project?
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
That's before your time?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was on the list when I got here. Lancaster Road, which if you're not familiar, is a very short stretch of road that the city owns between a county-owned stretch of road and the city of Saratoga stretch of road that they have both improved in the past several years, and the city, for whatever reason, did not and is in very poor condition. So,
Yeah.
and staff is working very hard to do that with other roads in town. Just because, right, this is not the most cost effective, but at this point where the street is something that is
This needs to
necessary.
get done.
When you say staff the way you just did,
Yeah.
do you mean anybody besides you?
No, I don't. But and generally, what you're told in government is you don't personalize things, because really, it is me here making these evaluations, but it's also the city manager, the city council has input as well. So it's just a general term. And most other cities do have staff.
Wears many hats.
Where is Seabury? I know where most of the other ones are. Where's Seabury?
Off Constitution.
Oh, okay.
And then Beck, which part of Beck is part of the San Jose Waters project, but the other side of Beck is not. So we would do the other side of Beck. That's in really...
So all these have, San Jose's not doing...
Correct.
Okay.
And so...
How do you coordinate with PG&E, water and sewer, and, how are all the schedules coordinated? And
Usually once we know that a project, from both sides, a project is going to go and we have it scheduled, they inform us. San Jose Water actually is pretty good about providing a map 3 or 4 years in the future. Somehow when these streets were reported to the state, that was just missed in the past year. But usually San Jose Water is very good about that. West Valley Sanitation is similar. PG&E is a little more difficult because people do individual projects with their services. And if they, for example, on, I want to say Viewfield this year, they dug up some of our newly paved work and they have to do more substantial patches than they would normally do on a street that wasn't just treated, is how we deal with PG&E. Same thing for emergency work, like the pipe that busted recently on, what's that street off Ridgecrest? Oakhurst.
Okay, so I have a question. You have 2 tables. Table 2 shows the proposed streets for 2020.
Right.
And Table 3 shows the proposed streets for 2021.
Yes.
We had just been talking about Bruce Avenue, and we said, if we don't do some of the stuff now, it's going to get punted down the road, which makes sense. Could it be added to 2021 if we were at a point in time where decisions had been made, or does that mean it's going to get put down to 2022 since the list is might be full for 2021?
No. So these streets, we have to report them to the state and to the VTA, but we're allowed to, when the time comes, to do whatever streets we want.
Okay.
But we have to give them some kind of projection.
Okay.
But that's a good point, it should be on this.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, should it be listed or no? Or does it not matter?
It does. To be frank,
really.
it doesn't really matter. I would say that a project on Bruce Avenue, unless all of what we just talked about falls through and we just decide to repave it and call it a day, would probably be coming from a different budget, a different line item on the budget than this.
Okay. All right.
And that's what Table 4 is about, are the streets that are potential
there we go.
neighborhood
Okay.
improvement projects.
Those are all things that would be outside the pavement.
Right, those would be outside of the general pavement maintenance program. So yeah, this was more of a just informational item, looking for any feedback, input. Like I said, we can give this list to the state and amend it at really any time, and also just kind of a heads up of why we aren't doing the streets that we previously reported to the state.
I think it looks great.
So would you like a motion that we
All right, this one doesn't really need a motion. This is more of an informational item. Also, I included just like an overall map so you can kind of just get a feeling of projects that have been done in the recent past, potential projects, and then exactly where those San Jose water projects are for the coming year. So just kind of an informational map.
So can I ask, because I imagine you have some kind of outreach to the residents on these streets beforehand.
Yes.
So say, is there, and I imagine there is, a place, say I live on one of these streets and then I get a notice that this is going to be done and I've got this coal under the pavement that I paved over, but you're not going to know about it, or some kind of issue, drainage issue or something. Is there a process where you get that feedback from the residents along there?
I mean, typically for the streets that we end up putting out in a bid package, I walk them. So a lot of times obvious issues come up that way. If somebody like paved it over a sinkhole, I don't know they would admit that. But I do understand what you're saying. Problems on their property that I wouldn't necessarily see. People do get noticed. We try to notice them a couple weeks before. They obviously get noticed a few days before the work is done by the contractor, but the city tries to notice them a couple of weeks beforehand. But at that point, the work is going to happen. And if we have to do something extra because there is a major flaw in the street, that ends up being a change order or something that we just have to address at the time.
Because I'm just thinking, actually, some of that input might be really helpful. I mean, sometimes you can't.
I was going to say yes and no, but then you get too many cooks in the kitchen and it's just like, whoa, I mean.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I will also say that oftentimes with the people who have the parking strips next to their house and the pavement, they will negotiate separately with the contractor to do that while they're there. And that is always an option that's told to the resident. Like, the city's not going to pay for this because it's not the city road, but if you want to, here's the contractor's contact information. Yeah. And typically they're happy to do that. Okay. Any other questions on this one?
I would want to blurt out a random comment.
Yeah.
That is this potential neighborhood improvement projects. And thinking of going back to Bruce, I wonder if that's somewhat us trying to spend money that the residents don't really even care about. And they didn't seem to want much.
That is true. That is an option to consider other streets.
Yeah.
I will say, some streets that aren't on this list that would also be good candidates are, there's a few little streets that are basically the end of streets in Los Gatos, so Bachman and West Ellenwood, and those streets that are surrounded by streets that have curb and gutter that are in Los Gatos and don't in our don't in our city. Those are also good candidates for those kind of projects.
Would it be just continuing? I haven't driven those. Would it be just continuing on what they had already done, or doing
basically
like
doing
our share of
drainage and then fixing the pavement?
Okay.
Those
Yeah,
are all.
I mean, you bring up a good point. They were just like, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I'd be hesitant to look at any more unless the residents come to us and say, we need help, or we'd like your help.
Well, and I think we looked at this because of the school.
Yeah, this was something different. We were already looking at it, but just,
I would say people are really receptive, like the project we did on Palos Verdes, Equestrian and Via Vaquero this year, we're pretty receptive to just curb and gutter, fix the drainage on my street. Usually there's not a whole lot of objection to that. And that helps us as a city because the drainage gets off the street and the pavement
yeah,
looks
if it's going to
longer.
save us money in the long run, then that makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense.
so those projects, I think, rarely have objection to them. People are just concerned about the frontage of their property, which is understandable. But things like, right, Bruce, where we're trying to add in traffic calming and pedestrian safety and those kind of things get way more public comment. And you're right, perhaps that's not something they're looking for. And that was the comment earlier, that if we wanted to do something with speed bumps on the street and go spend our, design money elsewhere, that is an option as well.
no, that's true. I mean, I know we only had 36% represented in the survey, so that's not,
I would guess that's a good percentage, though, isn't it?
I mean, I wasn't expecting
sure.
much more response than that.
Yeah.
So I'm not like disappointed with that, but right, it's not even half of the people who live on
No.
the street. So
The local ones,
yeah, no.
And frankly, if I've paved or I've put some of those pots and stuff, and then the city's gonna come and say, we need to fix drainage and we need to, we're gonna stripe and stuff, and my pots have to be moved now. I'm not.
And obviously, we try to avoid that. I would say on this summer's project, there were 2 properties that needed substantial changes to their frontage out of like 30. So I mean, but those 2 people, it does affect those 2 people. Yeah.
That's something we should probably all think about.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the right thing, but it's good.
Definitely rather focus on ones that'll save us pavement money. So are we done with that?
Yeah.
It's nice to know you're doing all this work.
So all we have left is Highway 9?
Yes. All right. Highway 9 user safety. So this was one where we had talked about this in December, and you'd asked for some more detailed information on some of the accidents, which I included in the staff report. I also included kind of a summary of the past phases of the Highway 9 Safety Improvement Project and what had been done in regards to bicycle safety. Also, I summarized some of the accidents both before and after the major bicycle improvements on Highway 9, and there has been a marked decrease. However, there still are a lot more accidents in this intersection than others in the county. So definitely there has been improvement, but it's by no means.
It's
But right.
a dubious honor.
Right, so
Yeah.
it's not like those didn't do anything, I would say, but I would say, to cut to the chase, the main thing here is that bicycle improvements, especially on Highway 9, because it's Caltrans, is really something that needs to be studied by someone who does that for a living. So if that's something that the commission desires, that would be a recommendation to council and something that would need to be budgeted.
Is there funding or MTC funding or something? Because it is on the county bike plan and
Right.
everything.
So that funding, yes, it would be eligible. That funding is sporadic at best and very competitive. I would say the closest thing coming up for that kind of funding is there's money for Measure B bike planning that they haven't released even the criteria for yet. But that this Highway 9 in general was on the list of projects to be funded by Measure B funds. So it would definitely be eligible. Since I don't have the criteria for that grant program, I have no idea at this point how competitive it would be.
And sometimes spending city money on the planning and then getting the
Funding to execute, yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Because I was trying to figure out, I know when I was working on this before, that was county, but then we annexed Jack Rose or whatever you want to
Right.
call it. Mm-hmm. But when I look up, so I was trying to figure out where the boundaries were.
Right.
When I look up the fire station, it's Los Gatos.
The one on Austin?
Yes, and when
Really?
I look on the county fire department's webpage, it's Los Gatos.
So that, I would guess, hasn't been updated. On the county records that I use usually for these things, there is a gap there. There's the city of Monte Sereno, there's the county, and then there's more city of Monte Sereno, and then the county, and then Saratoga.
I don't think Los Gatos is even close to there.
It might just be a Los Gatos address in the county.
Yeah, there is some funky things
Yeah,
going on right
where
up
people
there.
get
Funky
addressed.
things going
Yeah, I was trying to figure out why they call it Google does, but the county fire department calls it they say the Quito Road Fire Station, they list all of theirs, and they say it's Los Gatos.
Yeah, addressing is a weird planning thing that I don't get into.
So that is,
That, I'm pretty sure is county.
I'm trying to figure out where the boundaries are and all that Austin.
But maybe I got this from, I don't think this is up to date with that. There's some county, we recently annexed something, right?
Right.
And I think the city reports for that annexation, or for that project, is where I saw that some of that intersection was now Monte Sereno.
Makes sense, because Jack Rose is right next door.
Yeah. So my thoughts after reading this, first of all, you did a great job of gathering information, both the accidents and
the individual
what
accidents.
happened in the past, because that was before I got involved in. I knew there was a project. I thought it was a Saratoga project, so I didn't even realize work had been done at Austin Way. So I really appreciated that. I was going to, and I neglected to, talk to people I know, like at the VTA. Lauren Ledbetter, I'm sure you know her, for example. And maybe you and I could both talk to her. I don't know what would make sense. And get advice on this. She's on a Caltrans, I think the Caltrans Bicycle Committee. So she would have good insight into what to do here. So my gut feeling was I should try to reach out to people, and I know a couple other people I could reach out to and get advice on how we should move forward. I think, to me, that makes more sense than just asking the council to pay for some sort of study. I just don't think we're ready for a study. We don't know exactly what we want to ask for.
We know we have a problem.
Yeah, and if we make it clear to Caltrans they've got a big problem, maybe they'll spend money. I don't know.
Don't you think the fact that it has the most bicycle accidents in the county, makes it, more of an obvious choice? I'm sure there's a lot of different things, but I'm like, that's...
I would say from the county standpoint and getting money from the VTA and things that are specific to Santa Clara County, yes, I think it's a very compelling argument. Caltrans is I'm sure as you know, is a very large, complicated body, and it's very hard to convince them of anything without fronting money. It's just what it is.
So that's why Joanne said, Monte Sereno, front the money for the study, and then if the study suggests doing X, then we go to them to try to get the money to do that? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, but even the study, I would want it to be done by the right people. Because so much of that is the trees are there, and so the sun if you're coming this way, and the sun if you're coming that way, and then all the they've realigned those streets and tried to make the turn safer. By the way, another thing I'm hearing, I don't know if you guys seen this on Nextdoor, which I didn't even know this was happening, and I'd love to talk to the police department about it. People along that area.
I'm sorry, what area?
Austin?
Along Austin and towards Saratoga More and I can see how this happens. At first I couldn't see it, but then I drove up. They're coming in from side streets And they're making left turns because it's 2 lanes, and they're making a left turn on the 2 lanes that are coming from Saratoga. So if you're going towards Los Gatos and it's 2 lanes and a side street's coming in, they're not seeing in the dark that they need to go all the way across the median on the other side of the eucalyptus
They're
trees.
turning into oncoming traffic?
Oh, I read that
Oh.
on Nextdoor.
Oh.
That doesn't happen very often, though.
There were several people
Someone
that-
said that that happens more than we think, though. You're right, but
Yeah.
I don't think that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
It happened to me once in a very unfamiliar area, far from here.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to figure out, like, how does this happen?
It was-
Some of
I
them
thought
have
it was-
one-way
Right.
signs, so that at least if you're pulling out, you're like one way. And
my impression was that it was late at night and then it was alcohol related. That was my impression. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything said about that, and a couple of people said, yeah, that's happened, So anyway, that's something that I couldn't even imagine that until I read that, you just don't know what's happening out there.
So I think I've thought all along this is going to be a very slow process,
Yes.
Highway 9. And so what do people think about the next step is just trying to, and I will do some work or work with Jessica to figure out the best way to do it, to get some counsel from people that know more than us on where they think we should go next. Does that seem like
That
a reasonable
sounds like
approach?
yeah.
And I should have done some of that before this meeting. I apologize for not doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, and if it is a
Makes sense.
consultant, then who does this really well for bias?
And,
Like, who are the right people?
and does it seem like that approach would work? If the people that have more insight into the guts of Caltrans think that process would work?
Yeah, and who's worked with Caltrans before? And
Does that seem reasonable to you
Yes,
also?
I think that
Absolutely.
sounds great.
thank you, Barry.
Just to answer your original question, I'm not sure how well you can see
Yes.
this map. This is Dave's.
Yeah.
So that's Monte Sereno, this is county. This is Monte Sereno here from Saramonte to the
That's
other
not
Austin.
there yet.
And then
Yeah.
that's Saratoga.
So right past that Austin, that little corner of intersection, then it becomes Saratoga. So this whole
And if anybody's curious, Google Maps on my computer shows the exact same thing, but without the annexation. They're not up to date.
without this parcel
Yeah, they're
here.
not up to date, so if you cared to compare, but it is just that block, or whatever you call that funny shape.
So the other thing is, getting Saratoga, they have a bicycle commission, and they're pretty active, aren't they?
Yes, I'll definitely talk to, it's actually their Trails Commission that takes care of that sort of thing. And I do know the outgoing chair of that. I'll talk to him for sure.
Yeah, because I imagine it's a concern for them, and they're right on that border.
I'm also going to talk to Ying, just because she said she commutes that way, and she's kind of an expert on the subject. I took a note of that when she was talking. She drives through it. She must be, if she's scared of Masol, she must be scared of that too.
Exactly.
I
That's
find
what
it more scaring than
I
Masol.
know exactly.
Especially now that you know the statistics.
Yeah, she might come in a different way.
Or maybe she turns off, goes down
Yeah.
keto or something.
It's a scenic route.
I was
would
gonna
be
say,
worse, I
That's
was
a lot
gonna say.
safer.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I've hit I've come across bicyclists on that. I don't know what they're doing.
So,
A good
do we
next
need to have a motion on that?
No,
or
I think
okay?
that's just kind of direction, and that's how we're going to move forward with this topic.
No, we have engineers report at the
All
bottom, I
right.
think.
So, one thing to report is we have a contractor and a purchase order in place for that LED stop sign at the church and between the church and the school. So that should be installed during their spring break, which I believe is the second week of April. So that's exciting.
What was the process like? Did you have to go to the council, or is that in a discretionary spending level?
Yeah, that's on a discretionary spending level. So yeah, it was less than $15,000. During that same time, we're going to have some of the areas that are no parking repainted red, so it's just very clear as to where the no parking is around the school. So that is happening.
You know that,
Yeah.
that part of Dave's when you come from like Palos Verdes and stuff, where we were saying it needed to be moved over, where there was that right turn lane that was going to be, there was a car parked there, that was
Right.
going to be, and the lane needed to move over
Right.
so that, is that part of this too? or-
So the road striping isn't, but that no parking area where the curb should be red is.
Okay, in front of that house?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Which, it's going to be a fun conversation, but yes, that's part of it.
But it's supposed to have been read
Yeah,
this
no,
whole
that is
time.
that is passed by resolution several times because they added things to that resolution. So it was like republished each time of all those areas. And there are a few areas right now that aren't painted red that they'll be noticed, but there really is no conversation about it because it's in the city.
It's already been done. kinda. Okay. Well, I think that'll be helpful, on
And
that.
when will that restriping be done? 'Cause that-
So that'll be when the street's resurfaced. Yeah.
But are they going to paint it? Are they going to paint it red when they do the stop sign, install the stop sign, or no? Are they going to paint it when they do
That's
the striping?
the idea, is to do the painting red and the stop sign over that same time where the school
Okay.
is out. And
Yeah.
so when the students come back, it's all
Surprise.
one. Yes.
Did that crosswalk that was at Bruce and Winchester get painted?
So that's not ours. So I have brought that to the town of Los Gatos, but I would imagine if we ever get a Bruce project done that we could add that to there and they wouldn't object, but that not high on their priority list, to be honest.
Just one other thing that I just want to circle back around. When Ying talks to you about informing neighbors or whatever regarding the Winchester project, like I said, I know several people who live right off Winchester, whether it's Grosvenor or Eaton and stuff. It would be great to get the Monte Sereno residents noticed. So
Targeted noticing.
targeted notices so that they can,
And it would be
voice
actually
their
good for
concern.
Monte Sereno to blanket through their email blast too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody drives down Winchester at some time.
Well, I was going to say, but if you live off Eaton or Carl or Grosvenor, there's all those streets that are probably technically Monte Sereno, but you can't leave your residence without going there. I mean, unless you're going out the Saratoga way. But if you're going to 85 or 17, that's your street. So.
Who would you be required to notice, just out of curiosity? If they lived within a certain distance of Winchester, would you have to notice them?
So typically you only have to notice someone if you're changing the traffic pattern. So if you're putting in a stop sign or a light or a no turn kind of thing. So technically for this type of project, I don't think you have to notice anyone.
We didn't have to notice anybody on Bruce?
Technically, no. It's a public meeting. It is noticed here at City Hall. It's available to the public. Technically, that is the notice. Unless for something like permanent infrastructure is something you typically are required to notice. And then planning issues, but that's also for other residences, permanent structures.
Good practice, but it's not required.
Right.
I have an unrelated question if it's an appropriate time.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Do you have any plans for Measure B, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure?
That's on my list.
Okay.
So the second thing on my list was we're going to call the special meeting for the speed humps, but the regular meeting in April, I'm going to be out of town. So I guess since we're going to have a special meeting anyway, we can determine during that meeting if we want to reschedule the April meeting or just depending on what's going on. But just for your personal schedules, that meeting in April will have to be rescheduled, yes.
Yes, it's kind of perfect that we're having this special.
Yeah, no, it
So
works
the
out.
meeting,
April 9th.
9th, okay.
So we don't want to reschedule it today?
I mean, we can reschedule it for a different week if you would like to. I could send out a doodle poll as well, just because I know not everyone is here, but just, so you know, I'm gone that week. So that meeting will not be happening on that day. Then to your question, Barry, about
Why don't you send out a doodle poll?
Yes,
Because
I
that
will.
way we'll know that we have a quorum, because I know I'm probably gone the next week, the 16th.
Yeah, no,
so-
it's spring break time, and yeah, definitely. The MTC, the VTA has released grant applications and a call for projects for Measure B bike and pedestrian infrastructure programs. And to be eligible to even apply for these funds, it has to be on the list. And so the projects that are places on the list of Monte Sereno that are applicable are Highway 9, And then also the Winchester, something similar to the Complete Streets project, how Ying mentioned that the city will probably go in with Los Gatos on that as a joint applicant. So that the city is applying to, or is planning on applying for in concert with Los Gatos is some kind of planning improvements on Winchester. But the city also has what is considered a shovel-ready project, so a project that has the right-of-way and basically plans on the gap closure for Highway 9. So the part where, I think in phase 2 of the Highway 9 improvement project, where the walkway didn't get completed, which I believe is between where that flashing crosswalk is and then back towards City Hall to Field, I want to say, is missing, is a really good project because it's considered shovel-ready. Like technically, if we wanted to construct that in this summer, we could, technically, if we have money.
Okay.
And so that is something that the city is planning on applying for. And I think that's a fairly competitive project because a lot of projects at this point aren't really shovel-ready in other municipalities. But I will say that funding is very competitive. They're also doing it over a 10-year span, so it could be that we get funded, but we're low priority, and it doesn't happen until the 9th year.
Okay.
Which is kind of unusual. I would say most grant programs don't work that way, but this one does.
You need to apply right away to get anything in that 10 years, right?
Right, exactly. It's very, I think they're learning as they go. My guess is that the next call for projects will not go the same way, but that is what the situation is right now.
Okay.
And in this context, when you say the city, do you
Yes.
mean you?
Yes, yes, that is what I mean.
Very busy.
I usually, depending on the type of grant application, sometimes you have to ask for a resolution for council before you can even apply. But considering this is like 10 years out and they could be totally different people by the time you actually complete the project, you only need to involve a council resolution once you have been funded and you're going to go into a funding agreement.
But the only thing I'm wondering, just to get on there, is I know the reason that the project on Highway 9 got going was because it was Los Gatos, Saratoga County.
Right.
Monte Sereno all together. But considering it's filling in the gap of that project that went through those, I wonder if you can maximize that by, letters from the other cities.
I mean, definitely we can use all the back, because they're right, there was a ton of outreach done for that, and all of that counts as the outreach for this project. So, right, there's like a decade worth of outreach of this project that just wasn't completed. Plus, something that's considered a gap closure ranks high typically on grant applications.
That considered pedestrian only?
Yes.
That's a win for those cities too, because
Right, it's like,
I'm thinking
yeah.
any help they can give you.
And then,
So wait,
Okay.
backing up, is that the only submission that
So-
you're doing?
so there's two, right, there's the Winchester one, which the lead agency is the town of Los Gatos, but we are considered part of their application. And then, yes, Highway 9, I don't think we're eligible for any other projects.
Because we're not ready to go with.
Oh, because they weren't on the list. Like when Measure B was passed, there was a very specific list of projects, and Highway 9 improvements was one of the projects, and Bike County Corridors was another one of the projects, which is Winchester is part
And
of.
so by the projects, it had to be the design and everything.
I don't think so. I think some of the projects, frankly, were just ideas, or vetted ideas, things that have been talked about in other cities or in the county over a period of time, not necessarily designed, but they're very specific.
But if they're touching the county bike route, then they're eligible.
Correct.
Which, I don't know, I think Winchester is, but definitely
Right.
Highway 9 is.
There is some talk, just kind of off sidebar. They're having a meeting, I'm surprised Ying didn't talk about it, about connecting from Highway 9 down onto the bike path?
I went on an infrastructure ride with her and a bunch of Silicon Valley Bike Coalition people where they showed us where it was going to be, and
Okay, yeah.
That's their connector.
That was one of the other
project.
ones.
Yeah,
That
it
was
was
one
on
of the
her
other.
list.
It was on her list,
Yeah.
but it was not one of the 3 that she talked about.
Okay.
Because there were, I think, 5 or 6 listed, but she just identified, I think, 3 that,
We're most
probably
relevant to
most
the city. Yeah.
most relevant to Monte Sereno, because I think that would be more just Los Gatos. So.
Anything else we need to discuss?
Yeah, last one. So with the direction of the new city manager, I've been directed to develop a capital improvements program, which if you're not familiar is typically a 5-year projection of any kind of street projects, building projects, which we don't really have a whole lot of public buildings here, for a 5-year period. So I've started the process of developing that. I will bring that to you guys before it goes to the council, and then it goes to the council prior to it being budgeted. So we'll see how it goes. I like to throw in the whole kitchen sink and see what happens, but definitely you guys will be part of the prioritization process for that.
Well, at one point we had talked about there was going to be a sidewalk, kind of like the street surveys, but a sidewalk pathway kind of stuff. Is that still being done? I thought you said.
Oh, as part of the PMP, they did evaluate curb and gutter. Yes, and then the sidewalk where it exists. And so, yes, that is part of what would go into the CIP kind of for, I would say, like neighborhood improvement projects. That's definitely in a ranking scenario for improvements that would feed into the CIP.
So is your capital improvement project list going to include that building there? Something to...
So that is not in my personal scope.
Oh, okay.
So I would not be surprised if that was in there, but that's not in the engineering scope.
I saw that in an agenda for the council or something.
For
Something
Oh.
that I got from the city.
I know that people have been poking over there. That is all I know. And yeah, that's all I have. So just to be clear, for the special meeting that includes the speed hump policy, did we want that to be a regular meeting with other items, or are we just calling the special meeting specifically for the speed humps?
Given that we're going to miss a scheduled meeting,
Which we could reschedule that one as well if
but
you'd
it
like.
might, rather try to combine it and do it earlier, or do we have?
I know, what do we have on that agenda?
Yeah, most of it is.
I mean, would you have stuff? Because I don't think unless you had a report back, maybe.
Yeah, I mean that'll be an ongoing thing, but I might have something.
An update. I would say there might be like a preliminary CIP outline, might be an item that would be ready for next month. That would be another item. I can't think of any other off the top of my head.
My preference would be to go ahead and have a regular meeting so that then it can be, the next one can be shorter, because these two tend to drag on.
I'm just looking, do we want to try and do it the second Thursday? Does that?
I could put that out there. I mean, we can tentatively say that, and I'll put that out there to see, make sure we have a
Thursday the
quorum.
only day that people meet on? I'm just curious. Oh, okay.
Oh, no, you can meet on any day.
Okay, I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, I would just have to check the schedule for other scheduled meetings in this room.
It's a little noisy when there's two going.
Yeah, let's not do that
Was
again.
I was having a hard time concentrating
too.
there for a little bit of time there. I'm like, wow, can you guys keep it down?
Sounds like a party.
Yeah. So do you want to just throw out a doodle poll with maybe 3 or 4 options that might be available, and we can hopefully get 3 or 4 of us here?
Yeah.
I know.
Is there any day of the week that doesn't work for somebody, just for her to start?
I know I'm traveling a lot. My son's in season, so I go travel to all his games. So generally Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or Thursdays are okay. You know,
I'll throw out a few dates and times. We'll see what sticks.
It just depends on what week it is. So
Yeah, same with me. Depends.
yeah,
I
it's
will
the big
throw that out there
It's just like
early
whatever
next
hit the calendar. So.
And anything else that potentially to be agendized for next meeting or future meetings? One question I did have, I know last year we did we went over your goals. And I basically established goals for the commission last year. I'm not sure if you'd like to revisit that or just keep it on.
Yeah, one of our big goals was the school. We finished that, so that was good. We've checked that off. Do we want to think about that?
I think it's good just to focus on and.
To review the goals and discuss changes.
Especially with new members too.
Yeah. Like a very reasonable thing to do.
Okay. we'll throw that on there.
Jessica, do you have what our goals were?
Yeah.
Do you have it? Okay. Like, can you refresh our memory?
Yeah, no, I can definitely send that out again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You don't save all that? No.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Awesome.
Okay, does anybody else have any announcements or anything?
I just want to say thank you. And this was really interesting. Are they always this interesting? The whole, all the meetings?
We don't usually have, well, the past couple meetings we have, but sometimes we have nobody here. And it's just us talking, into our microphones. But
I would say
But
when
it's-
it's something on a specific street is when people turn
When
up.
people come. Yeah, that was really interesting.
But it is fun to hear from the community.
Yeah.
But they seem to assume we're wanting to do something bad.
I got that impression.
All right, it's 9:40. I'm going to adjourn.
Thank you. You turn off your.
Here I can turn off the whole thing.
Thank you, Jessica.